What if I told you that some of humanity's oldest monuments and relics were built long before we even began recording history? That beneath layers of time, buried in remote corners of the earth, lie structures and artifacts that defy explanation, silent witnesses to civilizations we barely understand. Imagine colossal stone circles, intricately carved statues, and mysterious inscriptions that predate known empires, whispering secrets we have yet to decipher. Who built them? And why did they vanish, leaving behind only traces of astonishing skill and knowledge? From the windswept plains of Europe to hidden tombs in deserts, from the depths of ancient forests to sunken ships lost to the ages, these discoveries challenge everything we thought we knew about our past. Every artifact, every ruin, carries a story, a riddle of ambition, belief, and ingenuity that modern science can only begin to unravel. So, as shadows of the ancient world rise before our eyes, and the faint echoes of forgotten civilizations stir our imagination, prepare yourself. Sit back, relax, and let's dive into the forbidden realms of ancient discoveries built before history, and see what secrets they're still keeping. In the damp, windswept plains of Zealand, Denmark, archaeologists uncovered a relic that seems to shimmer with an otherworldly significance. Crafted over 3,000 years ago, the Trundholm sun chariot is a small but extraordinary artifact. A bronze horse, delicately wrought, pulling a gilded disc across tiny, precise wheels. At first glance, it may appear simply as a ceremonial object, a product of Bronze Age artisanship. Yet the deeper one looks, the more questions emerge. The disc it carries is split into two sides, one coated in gold, gleaming as though catching the first light of dawn, the other dark and matte, suggesting the descent into night. Scholars generally agree that this was meant to symbolize the sun's daily journey across the sky, a powerful visual metaphor for light and darkness, life and death, the eternal cycle of time. But even as we understand its symbolic role, the precision and sophistication of the craftsmanship raise intriguing puzzles. The bronze horse is cast in careful detail, every curve and proportion deliberate, yet the wheels move smoothly across surfaces that would have been uneven and unpaved. Was it meant as a mobile offering, a teaching tool, or something else entirely? The artifact was discovered in 1902, buried in a peat bog near the village of Trundholm. Peat bogs, known for their preservative qualities, had safeguarded the chariot for millennia. When it emerged, it carried with it a silent testimony to a society that revered the sun in ways that feel surprisingly modern, despite originating around 1400 BCE. The age alone positions it among the most remarkable artifacts of the European Bronze Age. Yet, while we can date it, measure it, and categorize it, the intentions behind its creation are far less certain. Historians suggest it may have played a role in ritual ceremonies, perhaps revolving around the changing seasons, the solstices or agricultural cycles. Bronze Age communities were deeply attuned to nature's rhythms. Their survival depended on tracking time, predicting weather, and honoring the forces they could not control. In that context, the chariot is not merely decorative. It is a manifestation of understanding, an attempt to capture the intangible journey of the sun, to make it tangible, to bring it within human comprehension. Yet, as with many ancient artifacts, its mysteries multiply the closer we examine it. Why is the disc gilded with gold on only one side? Some have speculated that it represents not just day and night, but life and death, or even two parallel worlds, the visible and invisible, the mortal realm and the divine. The small size of the chariot, only a few inches long, suggests it may have been symbolic rather than functional. Could it have been placed on a pedestal for observation during ritual events? Or could it have been a part of a larger ensemble, now lost to time, designed to animate a Bronze Age cosmology in miniature form? Archaeologists point out the technical skill involved. Casting bronze in the 2nd millennium BCE was no trivial task, requiring knowledge of metallurgy, high temperatures, and the ability to control cooling to prevent cracks. The precise wheels, the balanced proportions, and the gold leaf applied to the disc all indicate a society capable of both artistic sophistication and scientific insight. Yet, despite these concrete achievements, the object retains an aura of the unknown. It is undeniably human, undeniably deliberate, but it gestures to a knowledge and a worldview that remains only partially understood. Beyond the practical and the ceremonial, some fringe theories have emerged. Could the Sun Chariot encode astronomical knowledge, a Bronze Age model of celestial mechanics? Some suggest it represents not the sun alone, but a broader cosmological system, an understanding of the sky, the stars, and the seasons. Others speculate it could be a teaching artifact, used to communicate complex ideas about light, time, and movement to a community without written records. There's no evidence to fully support these claims, yet they are compelling because the artifact invites them. It is enigmatic enough to suggest that its creators intended more than we can easily perceive. The symbolic duality of the disk, light and dark, day and night, may also reflect deeper spiritual or philosophical concepts. Bronze Age Europe is often characterized as pragmatic, focused on survival and subsistence. Yet the Trundholm chariot hints at a society capable of abstract thought and long-term observation. It represents a bridge between the physical and the metaphysical, the known and the unknowable. It suggests that humans, even in prehistory, sought to frame the cosmos in forms they could hold, touch, and carry with them, an attempt to exert comprehension over the cycles of the world. Even today, the chariot inspires wonder. In museums, it is displayed under glass, lit to emphasize the contrast between the gleaming golden disk and its darker reverse. Visitors are drawn in, not merely by the craftsmanship, but by the story it seems to tell silently, of a sun crossing the sky, of human curiosity and ritual, of a society that tried to map the heavens in bronze and gold. And yet, questions remain. What did the chariot mean to its makers in daily life? Was it a sacred object seen only by the elite, or a communal symbol known to many? What other artifacts, lost to bogs, soil, or time, once accompanied it in a broader ritual landscape? In the quiet contemplation of this small, ancient chariot, we encounter both clarity and mystery. We can trace its origin, its materials, its age, but the full significance of its symbolism escapes us, suspended between the past and the present. It stands as a testament to human ingenuity and imagination, and a reminder that even objects only a few inches long can carry worlds. As the golden light of the sun traces its path across the sky, we leave the windswept plains of Denmark and turn our attention southward to the quiet, fertile valleys of southeastern Turkey. Here, amid the gentle rise of hills and the meandering course of the Euphrates River, lies a site that predates nearly everything else in the region, Nevali Çori. Unlike the polished bronze and gold of the Trundholm sun chariot, Nevali Çori offers no gleaming surfaces or metalwork to dazzle the eye. Instead, it is the earth itself that has preserved the silent testimony of a people living nearly 10 millennia ago, in a time when the concept of civilization, as we understand it, had barely begun to take shape. The site was first excavated in the 1980s, a small patch of land destined to be submerged by the waters of a modern dam. What archaeologists uncovered was nothing short of remarkable. Rectilinear and circular stone buildings, carefully arranged along an organized settlement, punctuated by towering stone pillars carved with human and animal forms. At first glance, they may appear simple, almost primitive, but each detail, every carved figure, Each carefully aligned wall speaks to a community capable of imagination, planning, and symbolic thought. These are not mere shelters. They are expressions of a worldview, of a belief system encoded in stone and space. The pillars, in particular, are striking. Some are carved with stylized humans, their faces marked with exaggerated eyes, arms extended in gestures that remain open to interpretation. Others bear serpentine lines, birds, or other abstract motifs. Were these purely decorative, or did they serve a purpose far deeper, perhaps spiritual, in nature? Scholars generally suggest that these figures were part of ritual activity, that Nevali Çori functioned as both a settlement and a ceremonial center. Its inhabitants were among the earliest known communities to embrace agriculture, domesticating plants and animals, settling in one place rather than following the rhythms of hunting and gathering. Yet, alongside this practical mastery, they invested time, labor, and skill in crafting monuments that seem almost otherworldly in their intent. The age of Nevali Çori is staggering, approximately 8400 to 8000 BCE, placing it squarely in the early Neolithic period. To put this in perspective, it predates the Egyptian pyramids by several millennia, yet it exhibits a level of social and architectural sophistication that challenges assumptions about prehistoric societies. How did these people, working without metal tools or a written language, manage to conceptualize and construct such a carefully organized settlement? What inspired them to carve these pillars, to create what may be the earliest known examples of monumental sculpture in human history? Some of the most intriguing questions arise when we consider the scale and alignment of the structures. Certain buildings appear oriented along precise axes, possibly reflecting celestial events or seasonal changes. Was this deliberate, a conscious attempt to track the sun, the stars, or the passage of time? Or is it a coincidence, a natural consequence of practical building choices? Archaeologists lean toward intentionality, noting the recurrence of geometric patterns and the meticulous placement of pillars within ceremonial spaces. Yet without written records, these remain hypotheses, educated guesses in the face of evidence that is tantalizingly incomplete. Beyond the pillars and buildings, there is something almost intangible about Nevali Çori. The settlement evokes a sense of ritual rhythm, a careful choreography between humans, animals, and the natural world. Many scholars note that the carvings, especially those depicting animals or hybrid human-animal forms, may reflect mythic or spiritual beliefs. Some have even speculated cautiously that Nevali Çori represents one of the earliest attempts at a codified symbolic system, a precursor to religious or mythological expression that would evolve over the next several millennia. Could these figures encode stories, lessons, or cosmologies lost to time? Or are they, in the end, enigmatic gestures whose meaning will forever remain just out of reach? The context of discovery adds another layer of intrigue. Speculative theories arise naturally when considering such an ancient and enigmatic site. Some suggest that the alignment of buildings and pillars may represent astronomical knowledge, early calculations of solstices, or an intuitive understanding of celestial cycles. Others propose that the carvings hint at shamanistic or spiritual practices, where human and animal forms convey symbolic power or protection. While these ideas cannot be confirmed, they are not entirely implausible, and they serve to deepen the sense of wonder. Nevali Çori does not speak in words, but in gestures, patterns, and forms that invite interpretation. It is both known and unknown, a record of human ingenuity intertwined with the mysteries of early thought and belief. Perhaps the most profound lesson Nevali Çori offers is a reminder of the depth of human curiosity and creativity. Thousands of years before written history, before kings and empires, communities like this were already shaping their world with intention and imagination. They built structures that required foresight, labor, and collaboration. They carved images that conveyed meaning, whether practical, spiritual, or symbolic. And yet, despite the clarity of their craftsmanship, the full significance of their work remains elusive. As we linger in the shadow of Nevali Çori, tracing the contours of its pillars and imagining the lives of those who built them, we are left with an enduring question. What else lies hidden in the earliest chapters of human history, waiting to be discovered, waiting to whisper its secrets across millennia? The settlement offers glimpses, tantalizing and incomplete, into a mindscape that predates empire. From the sun-scorched plains of Sind, we journey northward once more, tracing the ancient corridors of human settlement into the rugged landscapes of southeastern Turkey. Here, in a region rich with the earliest signs of agriculture and permanent habitation, lies a site that has captured the imagination of archaeologists and historians alike: Karahantepe. Unlike the formal geometry of Chalkandi or the solemn lines of Nevali Çori, Karahantepe emerges from the earth as a forest of stone, monolithic pillars standing in quiet testimony to human hands that shaped them thousands of years ago, long before history was written. The first thing one notices upon entering the site is its scale and density. Towering stone pillars rise in clusters, some carved with enigmatic symbols and reliefs, others plain yet imposing. They are arranged in circles and semicircles, creating spaces that feel deliberate, almost theatrical, as if designed to guide movement or focus attention on unseen rituals. Sunlight casts long shadows across the carved surfaces, illuminating animal figures, abstract lines, and humanoid motifs that hint at stories, beliefs, or practices we may never fully understand. Dating back to roughly 9500 to 9000 BCE, Karahantepe is among the earliest monumental complexes in human history, contemporary with, or slightly younger than, its sister site, Göbekli Tepe. This timing situates it at the very dawn of human civilization, when hunter-gatherer groups were experimenting with settled life, domesticating plants and animals, and contemplating the mysteries of existence in ways that would lay the foundation for agriculture, religion, and urban life. And yet, what makes Karahantepe particularly compelling is not just its age, but the sophistication of its construction. Each pillar was carved with remarkable precision, suggesting a profound understanding of both stoneworking techniques and spatial planning. Some reliefs depict animals that were vital to the survival of the community: lions, boars, foxes, and snakes, rendered with an artistic skill that conveys motion and character. Others carry abstract symbols, geometric patterns that recur across multiple pillars, hinting at a symbolic language, a form of communication whose full meaning is lost to time. Scholars suggest that these motifs may have had spiritual significance, perhaps tied to cosmology, the cycles of nature, or the unseen forces that shaped their world. The arrangement of the pillars also sparks curiosity. Certain clusters appear oriented along specific axes, and some stones are positioned in relation to others in ways that may reflect celestial observation. Could these spaces have been used to track the sun, the moon, or the stars? Might they have served as a calendar, a ceremonial stage, or a place where community members gathered to witness and participate in rituals of great importance? While these interpretations remain speculative, the consistency and precision of the layouts strongly suggest intentionality, implying that the builders had a concept of order, symbolism, and shared purpose that transcends mere construction. Karahantepe is part of a larger cultural landscape connected to Göbekli Tepe and other Neolithic sites in southeastern Anatolia, yet it also possesses its own distinct character. The carvings at Karahantepe often exhibit greater abstraction and stylization, emphasizing lines and forms that seem almost coded rather than purely representational. Were these abstract carvings a type of proto-writing, or did they serve a ceremonial function intended to convey ideas only fully comprehensible to those who participated in the rituals? Perhaps they were mnemonic devices, a way of recording and transmitting collective memory long before written language existed. The work involved in erecting and carving these stones was immense. Communities that lacked metal tools or wheeled vehicles shaped massive limestone pillars using stone and bone implements, transported them across uneven terrain, and positioned them with precision. This required coordination, planning, and a shared vision, hinting at social structures more complex than previously assumed for pre-agricultural societies. The very act of building these monumental spaces speaks to a human impulse to create meaning, to impose order on the natural world, and to leave a lasting mark on the landscape. Yet with all this evidence of planning, artistry, and intent, Karahantepe is profoundly mysterious. Why did these people invest so much effort in spaces that were not domestic, not defensive, and not utilitarian in the traditional sense? What role did these pillars and enclosures play in their daily lives? Some theorists suggest that the site represents ritualized gatherings, possibly related to fertility, hunting, or ancestor worship. Others speculate that it reflects an early form of religious cosmology, a structured attempt to represent the forces that governed life, survival, and the universe itself. One of the most intriguing aspects of Karahantepe is the interplay between the figurative and the abstract. Animal depictions coexist with geometric motifs, human-like figures with symbolic lines, suggesting a worldview in which the natural, the spiritual, and the conceptual were intertwined. Did the people of Karahantepe see the world as a continuum where animals, humans, and unseen forces were connected in a complex web of meaning? Or were these forms primarily functional, serving as ritual markers, instructional tools, or talismans to mediate the relationship between humans and the environment? The site also raises questions about continuity and change. Karahantepe appears to have been abandoned and intentionally buried, much like Göbekli Tepe, a choice that has perplexed scholars. Why dismantle or cover a space of such effort and significance? Was it a response to environmental change, social upheaval, or evolving ritual practices? Or does it reflect a deeper cultural logic, one in which the concealment of sacred spaces enhanced their power or sanctity? These unanswered questions underscore the enigma that surrounds the site, reminding us that what we see today is only a fragment of a larger, largely invisible narrative. Walking among the pillars, it is easy to feel the weight of time pressing down. Thousands of years separate us from the people who carved these stones, yet their work resonates, offering glimpses into thought, belief, and creativity that are astonishingly sophisticated. The carvings, the arrangement of space, the effort required to create such a place, all point to a society grappling with existence, meaning, and the cosmos in ways that challenge modern assumptions about prehistoric life. Speculative interpretations abound, yet none can fully explain the site. Some suggest the enclosures may represent proto-temples, stages for ritual drama, or even early astronomical observatories. Others see the abstraction as a deliberate effort to encode knowledge, to create a symbolic language accessible only to an initiated few. Perhaps the site functioned simultaneously on multiple levels, practical, spiritual, and social, serving as a gathering place, a ceremonial stage, and a symbolic map of the universe. The ambiguity is part of the site's power. It refuses simple explanations, demanding instead careful observation, reflection, and imagination. As the sun sets over the rocky hills, casting long shadows across the monolithic pillars, one is left with a profound sense of awe. Karahantepe embodies the human impulse to create, to ritualize, and to seek meaning beyond survival. And yet, despite the clarity of the craftsmanship, the precision of the design, and the richness of the carvings, the purpose of this monumental site remains elusive. What drove these early communities to invest so much labor, ingenuity, and imagination into spaces whose meaning is only partially recoverable? And what other secrets, buried in the stones or lost beneath centuries of soil, still await discovery? In standing before Karahantepe, we are reminded that the human story is far older and more complex than we often imagine, and that even in a world without writing, without metal, and without cities, people sought to understand their place in the cosmos and to leave behind traces that would echo across millennia. As we leave the windswept hills of southeastern Turkey, our journey takes us southwest to the sun-scorched plains of ancient Egypt, where the Nile River has carved a ribbon of life across a vast arid landscape for millennia. Here, amid the golden sands of Saqqara, lies a structure that quietly defies the expectations of ancient Egyptian funerary architecture, the Mastaba of Shepseskaf. Unlike the soaring pyramids that dominate the Egyptian imagination, this tomb is a study in restraint, a flat-roofed, rectangular enclosure of carefully cut limestone, unassuming at first glance, yet imbued with a subtle power that speaks volumes about the society that built it and the enigmatic figure it was meant to honor. Shepseskaf was the last pharaoh of Egypt's 4th dynasty, a ruler whose reign, though brief, marked a significant transition. While his predecessors erected monumental pyramids, the Great Pyramid of Khufu and the Pyramid of Mehrgarh among them, Shepseskaf chose a different path. His tomb is not a pyramid, nor is it an unremarkable burial. It is a mastaba, a deceptively simple structure whose austere geometry conceals profound layers of meaning, raising questions that have intrigued scholars for generations. At its core, the mastaba is a rectangle of roughly 99 meters by 74 meters, with walls constructed of limestone blocks, meticulously placed to convey both stability and permanence. Its flat top and sloping sides give it a fortress-like appearance, a grounded monument that contrasts sharply with the vertical ambition of the pyramids that came before and after. Some archaeologists interpret this choice as a deliberate statement, an expression of humility, a reflection of a new religious ideology, or even a practical adaptation to political or economic pressures. Yet the absence of grandeur in verticality only deepens the mystery, prompting us to ask, why would a pharaoh, the embodiment of divine authority, abandon the visual language of power that had defined his dynasty for generations? The mastaba is more than its exterior. Inside, a network of chambers, corridors, and burial shafts reveals meticulous planning and ritual intent. Though much of its interior has suffered the ravages of time, excavations have uncovered fragments of statues, reliefs, and offerings, each hinting at the spiritual and symbolic significance that guided its construction. The placement of these elements suggests an attention to cosmic alignment, echoing beliefs in the afterlife that pervaded Egyptian culture, a world where the pharaoh's body and spirit could journey alongside the sun, traverse the night sky, and join the eternal order of the gods. Yet even as we appreciate the mastaba's design and symbolic intent, questions abound. Why depart from the pyramid form at this particular juncture in history? Some suggest that Shepseskaf sought to emphasize continuity with tradition while quietly redefining it, returning to older mastaba forms while incorporating innovations in burial practice. Others propose more speculative ideas, that the mastaba's restrained form reflects esoteric knowledge, a secretive philosophy held by the king and his inner circle, one intended to preserve the pharaoh's connection to cosmic forces in ways that transcended the visual spectacle of a pyramid. Could this tomb have encoded ideas about mortality, divinity, or celestial order that remain largely undeciphered today? The location of the mastaba itself adds another layer of intrigue. Positioned at the edge of the Saqqara necropolis, it is surrounded by the tombs of courtiers, family members, and contemporaries. Its proximity to these other burials hints at social and ritual hierarchies, yet its isolation from the monumental pyramids of Giza suggests a conscious decision to distinguish Shepseskaf's legacy. Was this physical separation a statement of independence, a form of spiritual protection, or merely a reflection of changing political circumstances? The answer remains uncertain, leaving room for interpretation and debate. The architectural details of the Mastaba are equally fascinating. The sloping walls, precise corners, and carefully leveled foundation indicate knowledge of geometry and engineering that rivals larger monuments of the era. Even the materials themselves, limestone blocks quarried with remarkable skill, testify to the resources, labor, and organization required for construction. Yet in the absence of grand pyramidal heights, the Mastaba communicates power in subtler ways, through proportion, order, and permanence. Could it be that Shepseskaf was seeking a different form of immortality, one grounded not in spectacle, but in enduring craftsmanship and cosmic harmony? The interior decoration, though fragmented, invites speculation. Reliefs and traces of painted surfaces suggest ceremonial use and ritual focus. Some scholars point to motifs that may represent celestial bodies, sacred animals, or symbols of regeneration and protection. Could these carvings have functioned as a guide for the pharaoh's soul, ensuring safe passage into the afterlife? Or did they serve as a visual codex for priests, encoding the rituals necessary to maintain divine order in both the mortal and spiritual realms? The evidence is tantalizing but incomplete, leaving us to piece together meaning from fragments, intuition, and comparative study. What makes the Mastaba of Shepseskaf particularly compelling is the tension it embodies between tradition and innovation, simplicity and complexity, seen and unseen. It is a tomb that resists immediate understanding, that challenges assumptions about pharaonic grandeur and power. In its quiet, horizontal presence, it hints at a philosophy of rulership, spirituality, and mortality that may have been deeply personal to the king himself. Perhaps Shepseskaf sought to communicate something essential about the impermanence of human ambition, or the enduring nature of the soul, in ways that his subjects and successors could only partially grasp. The Mastaba also encourages reflection on the broader human impulse to confront mortality. Across cultures and millennia, from the monolithic pillars of Karahantepe to the intricately carved stones of Chalkandi, the desire to leave a lasting imprint, to structure meaning in the face of the unknown, remains constant. Shepseskaf's choice of form, materials, and placement suggests an understanding that power is not only demonstrated in verticality or spectacle, but also in endurance, alignment, and subtlety. It is a reminder that even when history seems to prioritize grandeur, there are alternative visions of legacy, equally profound and equally mysterious. Speculative interpretations continue to emerge. Some researchers propose that the Mastaba may reflect early experiments with astronomical alignment, with the positioning of chambers or shafts corresponding to solar or stellar patterns. Others wonder whether its restrained form concealed esoteric knowledge reserved for a select few who could interpret the symbolic language of the tomb. Could the structure itself, through its geometry and orientation, have been a tool for spiritual transformation, designed to harmonize the king's essence with the rhythms of the cosmos? While definitive answers remain elusive, these possibilities underscore the depth and complexity of a site that, at first glance, might seem unassuming. As the sun dips toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the Saqqara plain, the Mastaba of Shepseskaf stands in quiet testament to an era of transition, innovation, and mystery. Its simple exterior belies a depth of purpose that continues to provoke inquiry and reflection. Here in the sands of Egypt, the past speaks softly but insistently, inviting us to consider not only the life of a single pharaoh, but the broader evolution of human thought, belief, and the enduring quest to understand our place in the cosmos. And yet, even after centuries of study and centuries more of survival in the desert sun, the Mastaba holds its secrets close. What messages were intended for the living, and what for the divine? What aspects of Shepseskaf's vision remain buried, waiting for discovery, interpretation, or perhaps forever lost to time? As we stand before this modest yet profound monument, we are reminded that history is never fully written, and that the human story, layered, complex, and often inexplicably beautiful, still beckons us to wonder. From the golden sands of Saqqara, where the Mastaba of Shepseskaf quietly defied the vertical ambitions of pharaonic Egypt, our journey takes us eastward once again, across the rugged terrains of the Iranian plateau, into the fertile plains of Balochistan in modern-day Pakistan. Here lies Mehrgarh, one of the earliest known centers of human civilization in South Asia, a settlement that flourished long before the Indus Valley cities rose to prominence. Unlike the monumental tombs and pillars we have explored, Mehrgarh is quieter, more intimate, a testament to human ingenuity in its earliest, most experimental form. Yet within its modest mud brick houses and rudimentary granaries, we find echoes of profound innovation, suggesting a society grappling with life, survival, and meaning in ways that challenge our assumptions about prehistory. Excavations at Mehrgarh have revealed layers upon layers of occupation, dating back as far as 7000 BCE. It was here, in this arid yet fertile valley, that humans first began to domesticate plants and animals, shifting from nomadic hunting and gathering to the rhythms of settled life. The remains of barley, wheat, and domesticated cattle point to a community capable of careful observation, experimentation, and adaptation, an intelligence applied not to monumental display, but to sustenance, survival, and continuity. Yet even in these practical endeavors, there is evidence of sophistication, creativity, and symbolic expression. One of the most remarkable discoveries at Mehrgarh is its craftsmanship in clay, bone, and stone. Small figurines, often depicting humans in abstracted form, suggest that artistic expression was already deeply entwined with daily life. Beads, ornaments, and painted pottery indicate not only aesthetic sensibilities, but also social structures, trade networks, and emerging cultural norms. Each artifact, no matter how small, hints at a worldview, an understanding of the self, community, and environment that goes beyond mere survival. What did these figurines represent? Were they talismans, spiritual icons, or objects of play? The truth remains tantalizingly out of reach. Equally compelling is the evidence of early technological innovation. Mehrgarh residents mastered techniques for shaping tools, grinding grains, and producing fired clay vessels. The discovery of ceramic storage containers, grinding stones, and early copper artifacts points to a community pushing the boundaries of material knowledge, experimenting with resources in ways that would lay the foundation for future civilizations. Yet for all its innovation, much of Mehrgarh retains an aura of mystery. How did these early settlers conceptualize their world? Did they understand time, seasonality, and agricultural cycles in ways that informed ritual and belief? Or were these observations purely pragmatic? The layout of the settlement itself raises questions. Houses were often rectangular and made of mud brick, arranged in clusters that suggest planning, social organization, and perhaps a nascent form of urban thinking. Courtyards and shared spaces hint at communal life, while burials within or near homes indicate an intertwining of daily existence and ritual. Some graves contained goods, beads, tools, ornaments, suggesting beliefs in an afterlife or at least a desire to accompany the deceased with meaningful objects. Could these practices reflect proto-religious ideas, or were they simply expressions of familial respect and social hierarchy? Scholars continue to debate, and each discovery seems to deepen rather than resolve the mystery. One of the most enigmatic elements of Mehrgarh is the continuity and evolution of cultural practices over millennia. The site shows evidence of long-term occupation, adaptation to environmental changes, and increasing complexity in material culture. From simple mud brick dwellings to sophisticated crafts and early metallurgy, we see a trajectory of human ingenuity that foreshadows the urban centers of the Indus Valley by several thousand years. Yet, despite this progression, the motivations, beliefs, and inner lives of these people remain largely invisible. What drove these early communities to innovate, to create, and to settle so enduringly in one place? Speculative interpretations emerge naturally from the evidence. Some archaeologists suggest that Mehrgarh may have served not only as a domestic and agricultural hub, but also as a ritual center, a space where early humans negotiated the unknown forces that shaped their survival. The presence of figurines and burial goods hints at symbolic thinking, an awareness of mortality, and possibly a proto-religious sensibility. Could the community have had spiritual leaders, shamans, or ritual specialists guiding these practices? And if so, what knowledge did they preserve or transmit that has been lost to time? These questions, while unresolved, offer a tantalizing glimpse into the cognitive and cultural evolution of early human society. The interplay between the practical and the symbolic at Mehrgarh is particularly striking. On one hand, we see clear evidence of subsistence: agriculture, animal husbandry, tool-making, and storage. On the other, there is art, ornamentation, and burial ritual, suggesting a society that valued meaning, memory, and expression alongside survival. This duality, present in so many ancient sites, raises profound questions about the human impulse to seek significance beyond immediate needs. Were the figurines and ornaments merely decorative, or did they carry coded messages, ancestral memory, or spiritual power? Did the people of Mehrgarh understand their world through observation, imagination, or a combination of both? Environmental and geographical context further deepens the intrigue. Situated along the Bolin River's tributaries, the settlement was both protected and vulnerable, fertile for agriculture yet exposed to seasonal floods, climatic shifts, and the challenges of a semi-arid landscape. How did these early settlers perceive their environment? Did they attribute sacred significance to rivers, hills, and skies, integrating natural cycles into ritual and daily life? The evidence suggests a sophisticated relationship with the landscape, one that blends necessity with reverence, observation with belief. The discoveries at Mehrgarh also invite reflection on the origins of human innovation itself. This site, with its thousands of years of continuous occupation, technological experimentation, and cultural expression, challenges traditional narratives of civilization arising suddenly in urban centers. Instead, we see a gradual accumulation of knowledge, skill, and symbolic thought, a slow unfolding of human potential that bridges the gap between nomadic survival and organized society. And yet, as with all ancient sites, the full story is incomplete. Each artifact recovered, each structure unearthed, answers some questions while raising many others. Walking through the remains of Mehrgarh, one can almost sense the rhythms of life long ago: the labor of tilling fields, the crafting of tools, the shaping of clay into vessels, and the quiet rituals that may have accompanied birth, death, and the passage of seasons. The site speaks of human persistence, ingenuity, and curiosity. And yet, for all we know, there are layers yet unexcavated, stories lost to erosion, and secrets encoded in materials we have yet to understand. What knowledge, practices, or beliefs remain hidden beneath the soil? What did these early inhabitants know about life, death, and the cosmos that we can only glimpse through fragments of pottery, bone, and stone. Mehrgarh is, in essence, a meditation on human beginnings, a place where survival, creativity, and symbolic thought converge in ways that continue to provoke wonder. It is a reminder that the roots of civilization are ancient, complex, and often elusive. Even as archaeologists painstakingly piece together evidence from thousands of years ago, the settlement retains its mysteries, whispering across millennia, inviting us to contemplate the ingenuity, courage, and imagination of humanity in its earliest chapters. And so, as the sun sets over the plains of Balochistan, casting long shadows over the ruins of mud-brick homes and ancient granaries, we are left with a profound question. What other discoveries, still buried, await to illuminate the lives, thoughts, and beliefs of those who came before recorded history? Mehrgarh hints at answers, yet the full story remains just out of reach, a reminder that the earliest chapters of human civilization are still, in many ways, forbidden territory. From the sun-drenched plains of southeastern Iran, where the Halil River meanders through arid landscapes, emerges one of the most enigmatic and captivating civilizations of the ancient world, the Jiroft culture. Hidden for millennia beneath layers of soil and sand, the evidence of this society whispers of a people whose artistry, urban sophistication, and symbolic thinking rivaled some of the better-known civilizations of the 3rd millennium BCE. Today, the valley seems quiet, almost timeless, yet beneath its surface lie traces of a culture that once thrived, connected by trade, ritual, and imagination, to a broader world that stretched from Mesopotamia to the Indus Valley. The first glimpses into Jiroft came at the turn of the 21st century, when excavations revealed a remarkable array of artifacts, intricately carved chlorite vessels, stone and ivory figurines, seals adorned with cryptic symbols, and an assortment of tools that suggest a highly skilled population. These objects are not merely decorative. They hint at a culture deeply invested in representation, communication, and ritual. The chlorite vessels, often depicting fantastical creatures, mythological scenes, or composite human-animal forms, raise questions about the society's symbolic literacy. Were these carvings storytelling devices, cosmological diagrams, or ceremonial objects? Could they reveal an understanding of the world that modern eyes can scarcely grasp? Each artifact seems to bridge the tangible and the intangible, a silent record of beliefs, ideas, and practices long since lost to time. Architectural remains add another layer to the mystery. Excavations uncover multi-roomed structures, fortified enclosures, and urban layouts that speak to careful planning and social organization. Some buildings likely served administrative or ritual functions, possibly acting as centers for governance, religious observance, or community gatherings. Others were domestic, evidence of daily life, storage, and communal activity. Together, these structures suggest a society capable of complex coordination, balancing practical needs with symbolic and ceremonial considerations. And yet, so much about Jiroft remains obscured. How were these urban centers governed, and what social hierarchies shaped the lives of its inhabitants? Perhaps most tantalizing are the inscriptions and symbols found on seals and tablets. Though undeciphered, these markings suggest a form of communication or record-keeping that may predate or parallel the cuneiform of Mesopotamia. Could Jiroft have developed its own system of writing, a tool for commerce, ritual, or storytelling? And if so, what knowledge, legal, religious, or philosophical, was encoded within these symbols, now left largely unintelligible to us? The very presence of these markings raises the possibility of a sophisticated intellectual tradition, hinting at a culture deeply engaged with ideas, memory, and meaning. The artistry of Jiroft extends beyond mere decoration. Many objects feature hybrid beings, mythic creatures, and intricate motifs that appear repeatedly across vessels, figurines, and seals. Were these representations of gods, spirits, or cosmic forces? Were they protective talismans, ritual tools, or expressions of a shared mythological language? Or perhaps they were aesthetic explorations, reflecting a society that reveled in creativity and imagination. The ambiguity is part of the site's allure. Every piece is a fragment of thought, every carving a question posed to the present. Trade and external influences further complicate the picture. Jiroft's location along the Halil River placed it within corridors connecting Mesopotamia, the Iranian Plateau, and the Indus Valley. Archaeological evidence suggests the import of materials not native to the region, implying networks of trade that spanned hundreds of kilometers. Was Jiroft a hub of economic and cultural exchange, a meeting point where ideas, goods, and ritual practices converged? If so, how did this connectivity shape the development of art, governance, and urbanism within the valley? And what stories, technologies, or spiritual practices might have traveled along these routes, only to vanish from historical memory until rediscovered in modern excavations? The burial practices and ritual objects of Jiroft provide another glimpse into the civilization's worldview. Tombs, grave goods, and symbolic motifs suggest an awareness of mortality and a concern with social status and memory. Objects found in burial contexts echo the iconography of domestic and ceremonial items, hinting at a worldview where life, death, and the cosmos were intricately intertwined. How did the inhabitants conceptualize death and the afterlife? What role did ritual and symbolic representation play in mediating the human experience of impermanence? These questions linger, unanswered, as the valley continues to guard its secrets beneath layers of earth. Environmental factors also shaped Jiroft's trajectory. The Halil River Valley, while fertile, is subject to floods, shifting courses, and erosion. How did the people adapt their agriculture, settlement patterns, and urban infrastructure to these challenges? Could environmental pressures have contributed to the civilization's decline, leaving the region abandoned and its history hidden until modern archaeologists rediscovered it? The story of Jiroft invites reflection on the breadth and depth of human ingenuity. Here, in a remote valley, a society engaged with complex artistry, urban planning, symbolic communication, and ritual practice, all while existing contemporaneously with other early civilizations whose histories are better documented. And yet, despite the sophistication revealed by the artifacts and ruins, much remains unresolved. How did this culture arise, flourish, and eventually fade? What knowledge, beliefs, or innovations were lost with its decline? Walking through the remnants of Jiroft today, one can almost sense the presence of its long-gone inhabitants. The river winds quietly through the valley, as it did thousands of years ago, past burial mounds, stone structures, and carved vessels that hint at a society attentive to both the material and the symbolic. And while modern excavations have uncovered remarkable treasures, they also highlight the enormity of what remains unknown. What other secrets lie buried beneath the sands, waiting to reveal themselves? What stories, beliefs, or inventions have yet to be rediscovered? Jiroft challenges our assumptions about the origins of civilization, creativity, and symbolic thought. It reminds us that human societies of remarkable complexity could emerge in places long overlooked, and that the history of humanity is far richer, more intricate, and more mysterious than conventional narratives suggest. As the sun sets over the Halil River Valley, casting shadows across ancient stone and buried artifacts, the question remains: what else has been lost to time, and how many other civilizations, equally sophisticated, await rediscovery in the silent layers of our world. From the fertile plains of the Levant, where kingdoms rose and fell like waves upon the desert sands, our journey carries us into the heart of Syria, into a world that once thrived at the crossroads of empires. Here, beneath the ruins of the ancient city of Qatna, archaeologists have uncovered one of the most extraordinary finds of the modern era, a royal tomb, sealed for more than 3 millennia. Hidden beneath layers of stone and silence, it remained untouched by looters and conquerors, a time capsule of an age that still resists full understanding. The city of Qatna itself was no minor settlement. During the 2nd millennium BCE, it was a flourishing kingdom, strategically positioned along the great trade routes that linked Mesopotamia, Egypt, Anatolia, and the Levant. Its wealth was legendary, drawn from caravans bearing lapis from Afghanistan, cedar from Lebanon, gold from Nubia, and tin from as far as Central Asia. To rule Qatna was to stand at a nexus of ancient power, a place where politics, religion, and commerce converged in a delicate balance. And beneath this powerful city, in 2002, a team of archaeologists stumbled upon something few had dared to dream of: a royal burial chamber, hidden for over 3,300 years. The Qatna tomb was not an ordinary grave, but a labyrinth of stone corridors and chambers stretching deep beneath the palace complex. Within its walls lay not only human remains, but treasures of exquisite craftsmanship: gold, lapis lazuli, carved ivory, and ritual objects carefully arranged as if in eternal service to the departed rulers. Unlike so many other sites of the ancient Near East, this tomb had escaped the hands of looters. What lay inside was, quite literally, frozen in time. The first impression upon entering the tomb was one of immense solemnity. Archaeologists described the air as heavy, stale, a stillness that seemed to carry the weight of centuries. Torchlight revealed carved stone sarcophagi, some holding the bones of royals long since turned to dust. Around them, vessels of gold and silver, bejeweled ornaments, and intricate ritual objects testified to both wealth and belief. To stand in that chamber was to feel the closeness of the ancient dead, their presence echoing across the gulf of time. But beyond the material splendor, the Qatna tomb raised profound questions. Who were these rulers entombed in such grandeur? What rituals had consecrated their burial? And most intriguingly, why had this chamber remained hidden and sealed while countless others across the ancient Near East were plundered, often within years of construction? Was it mere chance, or was there a deliberate act of concealment? Among the most remarkable discoveries within the tomb were items that seemed to transcend simple burial offerings. Elaborately carved vessels depicted scenes of banquets, processions, and mythological beings. Small amulets, crafted with precision, bore protective symbols, hinting at a complex spiritual world in which life and death were intimately linked. Some scholars suggest these objects were meant to serve the deceased in the afterlife, ensuring comfort and divine protection. Others propose that they reflected royal power itself, symbols intended not merely for the dead, but as messages to future generations about the might and authority of Qatna's rulers. The architectural design of the tomb adds yet another layer of intrigue. The chambers were not arranged haphazardly but followed a deliberate plan, with long corridors, concealed entrances, and multiple burial rooms. Was this a security measure to deter would-be intruders? Or did it reflect a cosmological vision, a symbolic journey through the underworld? The very layout seems to embody both practical foresight and metaphysical meaning, an interplay of engineering and belief that invites endless speculation. And then, there are the human remains themselves. Analysis of the bones has revealed individuals of high status, but their identities remain elusive. Were these kings and queens of Qatna, whose names once echoed in diplomatic letters sent to Egypt and Babylon? Or could some of the burials belong to foreign princesses, married into the royal family as part of political alliances? Without inscriptions to confirm, the identities of these ancient dead remain locked in silence, leaving us to wonder what stories lie buried with them. The artifacts also hint at Qatna's far-reaching connections. Egyptian-style scarabs, Mesopotamian-inspired seals, and objects crafted from distant materials all suggest that the rulers of Qatna participated in the vast web of cultural exchange that defined the late Bronze Age. Yet this raises another question. Were these items gifts, spoils of war, or sacred imports imbued with meaning beyond their material value? Each object becomes a clue, a fragment of a broader narrative that links Qatna to the wider ancient world. Some researchers have gone further, proposing that Qatna's royal tomb reflects not only the wealth of its rulers, but also their ambition to embody a cosmic order. Could the carefully arranged treasures, the sealed corridors, and the very act of concealment itself have been meant to mirror a spiritual journey into eternity? Was this tomb not just a burial place, but a kind of portal, an architectural expression of a worldview in which the boundary between life and death was porous, negotiable, and sacred? More speculative theories suggest even deeper mysteries. Some point to the tomb's remarkable preservation as evidence of intentional secrecy, perhaps an act of magical protection, invoking rituals or curses to keep intruders away. Others wonder whether the wealth of Qatna was in part derived from knowledge now lost, techniques of metallurgy, ritual, or trade that gave the kingdom a unique edge before it vanished from history. While such ideas cannot be proven, they remind us that the ancient world was filled with practices and beliefs that resist easy explanation. What is most striking about Qatna is how its discovery reshapes our understanding of the late Bronze Age. For centuries, the narrative of this era has been dominated by the great powers: Egypt, Hatti, Babylon, and later Assyria. Yet the Qatna tomb reveals that other kingdoms, too, wielded immense wealth and cultural influence, their legacies preserved not in written chronicles, but in stone and gold. In the stillness of that tomb, we are reminded that history is never complete, that countless voices remain unheard, countless stories untold. And so, as we gaze upon the treasures of Qatna, we are left with lingering questions. Why did this city, once so powerful, fade from prominence? What rituals were performed in those shadowed chambers, as mourners carried their rulers into eternity? And perhaps most hauntingly, how many other tombs, sealed beneath sand and stone, remain hidden across the ancient Near East, waiting, like Qatna, for the moment when their secrets are finally revealed? The silence of Qatna speaks volumes, but not in words. It speaks in gold, in ivory, in corridors carved into the earth. It speaks in the absence of plunder, in the survival of fragile objects across 3,000 years. And it asks us to consider the fragile line between memory and oblivion, between what is discovered and what remains forever lost. Even now, as archaeologists continue to study its contents, the Qatna royal tomb remains more mystery than revelation. Its treasures tell us much, but its silences tell us more. What knowledge has vanished with the rulers who once commanded this city? What wisdom remains entombed in objects we cannot yet fully interpret? The questions linger, unanswered, reminding us that the past is never entirely past. It waits in shadowed chambers for those who dare to listen. From the palaces and tombs of the Near East, our path now carries us farther east, toward the plains of South Asia, where the great Indus River once nourished one of the world's earliest and most enigmatic civilizations. Stretching across what is now Pakistan and northwest India, the Indus Valley civilization flourished more than 4,000 years ago. Its cities, Harappa, Mohenjo-Daro, Dolavira, were marvels of urban planning, with straight streets, standardized brick construction, advanced drainage systems, and evidence of social organization that rivaled the grandeur of Mesopotamia and Egypt. But within these ruins lies a mystery unlike any other, a script, carved and stamped on countless small seals, tablets, and pottery fragments. Tiny symbols, elegant yet cryptic, that have resisted every attempt at decipherment. To this day, the Indus script remains silent, holding its secrets behind a wall of undecoded signs. Imagine standing in the dust of Mohenjo-Daro, where the sun beats down upon the remnants of streets once teeming with life. In your hand lies a seal of steatite stone, no larger than a coin, yet inscribed with characters that seem at once familiar and alien. A sequence of lines, loops, and geometric shapes, sometimes accompanied by the figure of an animal, a bull with proud horns, or a strange creature that seems half real, half myth. The symbols are orderly, deliberate, as though conveying meaning. But to us, they are mute. What message was pressed into clay 4 millennia ago? Was it a name, a prayer, a record of trade, or something more profound? Archaeologists have uncovered thousands of such inscriptions. Most are brief, rarely longer than 5 symbols, and never more than about 20. Unlike the sprawling epics of Mesopotamian cuneiform or Egyptian hieroglyphs, the Indus inscriptions are terse, economical, almost minimalist. Yet they are consistent enough to suggest a system of writing, not random decoration. Some scholars argue that we are looking at the script of a literate civilization, one that recorded transactions, mythologies, or laws. Others, however, suggest that these marks might represent something less, symbols of ownership, clan markers, or religious icons, never intended to capture the full breadth of spoken language. The challenge is compounded by the absence of a bilingual text. When Jean-François Champollion deciphered Egyptian hieroglyphs in the 19th century, he had the Rosetta Stone, a decree inscribed in both Greek and Egyptian scripts, which provided the key. For the Indus script, no such guide exists. The inscriptions stand alone, untethered to any known language, unaccompanied by lengthy texts that might reveal patterns of grammar or syntax. And yet, the enigma deepens. The sheer uniformity of the symbols across such a vast geographic area, spanning more than 1,000 kilometers, suggests a shared cultural or administrative system. How did such consistency arise without writing as we know it? Could the Indus Valley civilization have possessed a form of communication fundamentally different from that of its contemporaries, one not easily captured by modern linguistic categories? Mainstream scholars continue to debate. Some propose that the script encoded an early form of Dravidian, the language family that still survives in southern India today. Others see connections to early Indo-Aryan tongues. Statistical analyses have even revealed patterns resembling those of known written languages, suggesting that the symbols do capture linguistic structure, even if we cannot yet assign sound or meaning to them. But the script's brevity leaves room for alternative interpretations. A minority of researchers claim the symbols are not writing at all, but rather a set of religious or political emblems, repeated for symbolic effect. In this view, the Indus people may have expressed themselves in ways that did not rely on long written texts, perhaps through oral traditions, ritual performance, or visual art. If so, then our search for a lost writing system might itself be misguided. Still, some details refuse to be explained away. Certain sequences of signs recur with striking regularity, as though representing names, titles, or common phrases. One particularly famous seal depicts what appears to be a horned figure seated in a yogic posture, surrounded by animals. Some interpret this as an early prototype of the Hindu god Shiva, suggesting that religious traditions now central to South Asia may stretch back into the depths of the Indus world. Could these symbols preserve the earliest written glimpses of ideas that would later shape civilizations for millennia? Others have gone further, venturing into the realm of speculation. Could the brevity of the inscriptions reflect a kind of shorthand for rituals, trade records, or astronomical observations? Some fringe theorists suggest links to lost knowledge, an ancient code, perhaps, designed for select initiates rather than the public. More radical still are theories proposing connections between the Indus script and other ancient symbols found as far afield as Easter Island's Rongorongo tablets or the mysterious markings of Neolithic Europe. Though such claims remain highly contested, they remind us of how the unknown invites human imagination to seek patterns across time and space. There is also the haunting question of why the script disappeared. By around 1900 BCE, the great Indus cities began to decline. Urban life receded, trade networks contracted, and the script vanishes from the archaeological record. Did the knowledge of writing simply fade, carried away by the winds of migration and social collapse? Or was it deliberately abandoned, perhaps as a result of shifting beliefs or changing cultural needs? The silence of the Indus script becomes not just a puzzle of linguistics, but a window into the fragility of human achievement. What might be hidden in those undeciphered signs? Could they contain the laws of the Indus rulers, the hymns of their priests, the stories of their gods? Or might they preserve something even more practical? Records of trade, contracts, inventories of goods flowing through the bustling streets of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro? Each seal, each inscription, is a fragment of a lost voice, an echo of a civilization that spoke but left us no translation. And so the Indus script endures as one of the greatest unsolved riddles of the ancient world. It is a reminder that for all our modern knowledge, vast realms of the past remain locked away, hidden in plain sight on stones, seals, and fragments of pottery. The people of the Indus Valley built cities of astonishing sophistication, but their words, the very essence of how they saw themselves, remain beyond our grasp. Perhaps one day, a new discovery will provide the key, just as the Rosetta Stone did for Egypt. Until then, the script sits on the edge of understanding, tantalizing, familiar, yet impenetrable. Its silence invites us to wonder not only what it says, but why it has remained unread for more than 4,000 years. What truths lie within those simple signs? Are they the voices of merchants, priests, or kings? Or are they something altogether different? An entirely unique form of human expression we have yet to comprehend? The answers remain elusive, reminding us that the story of civilization is still being written, sometimes in characters we cannot yet read. From the lost voices of the Indus Valley, our journey now carries us across oceans and continents into the dense jungles of southern Mexico. Here, among the towering ceiba trees and vines that conceal crumbling stone, lies the ancient city of Palenque. Once a thriving seat of Maya power, Palenque is famed for its artistry, its hieroglyphic inscriptions, and its grand temples rising like sentinels above the forest canopy. But buried deep within its stone heart, beneath layers of history and ritual, an extraordinary discovery came to light in 1994, an enigma scholars now call the Tomb of the Red Queen. Inside Temple 13, not far from the more famous Temple of the Inscriptions, archaeologists broke through a sealed passage and stepped into a hidden chamber. What they found defied expectation. At the center of the room lay a massive stone sarcophagus. When its lid was lifted, the chamber seemed to glow. The skeleton within had been covered in a brilliant red pigment, cinnabar, a substance made from mercury sulfide. The mineral had stained the bones, the offerings, and the walls themselves in a vivid crimson hue. To those who gazed upon it for the first time, it must have seemed less an archaeological discovery than an encounter with something otherworldly. Who was this woman entombed in red? Her body lay adorned with jade ornaments and pearl shells, symbols of high status in the Maya world. The sheer quantity of cinnabar suggested a burial of enormous importance, for cinnabar was not only precious but dangerous, its mercury content toxic, even deadly. It was used sparingly and with intent, often associated with rituals of rebirth, the cycle of death and regeneration, and the belief in transformation between worlds. Covering the body so completely in red may have symbolized blood, life force, or divine essence. But the true purpose remains unclear. Was it meant to preserve her spirit, to guide her into the underworld, or to mark her as something more than mortal? The Maya were a civilization deeply attuned to cycles of time and cosmic order. Their rulers often took on divine roles, serving as mediators between gods and people. Could the Red Queen have been such a figure, a queen, a priestess, or perhaps even a ruler in her own right? The absence of inscriptions within the tomb complicates matters. Unlike the tomb of Pakal the Great, nearby in the Temple of the Inscriptions, no carved glyphs proclaim the Red Queen's identity. Instead, she remains silent, leaving only the crimson traces of her burial. Scientific analysis has offered partial clues. Studies of the remains suggest she was a woman between 60 and 70 years old at the time of her death, an advanced age for the Maya world. Her teeth showed signs of wear, and her bones bore the marks of arthritis. Yet the richness of her burial demonstrates she held extraordinary significance. Some scholars have proposed that she may have been Lady Ixtzakbu Ajah, wife of Pakal the Great. If so, her tomb would provide a direct link to one of the most powerful dynasties of Palenque. Others argue she could have been an earlier ruler's consort, or even a figure entirely unknown to us, her memory deliberately hidden or forgotten. But why was her tomb placed beside Pakal's and not within his own temple? Was it a deliberate act of separation, or perhaps one of balance, as if the two tombs together formed a greater ritual design? Could the pairing of Pakal and the Red Queen reflect a cosmological duality, male and female, sun and moon, life and death? The architecture itself invites such speculation, for the Maya often built with celestial alignments and symbolic patterns in mind. Then there is the cinnabar itself. The sheer quantity used, covering not only the body but the entire chamber, suggests extraordinary intention. Was this a symbolic rebirth, the queen clothed in the color of blood to ensure her vitality in the afterlife? Or could cinnabar have been believed to preserve the spirit in ways we can no longer understand? In many cultures, red has been the color of transformation, passion, and power. To the Maya, it may have been the very essence of the sacred, and yet cinnabar's toxicity raises further questions. Was the danger of its mercury content known to the Maya? If so, might its use have been a deliberate invocation of both life and death, a substance embodying both vitality and poison? As with many great discoveries, the absence of definitive answers has opened the door to more speculative theories. Some fringe interpretations suggest that the heavy use of cinnabar may point to esoteric knowledge, perhaps even connections to practices far beyond Mesoamerica. Others see in the tomb echoes of ancient global rites, from Egyptian mummification to Chinese burial traditions where cinnabar was also employed. Could there have been a deeper, perhaps universal, understanding of red pigment as a bridge between worlds? Equally intriguing is what the tomb does not reveal. No hieroglyphic texts, no murals, no clear markers of lineage. For a civilization that so often recorded its dynastic histories in stone, the silence here is striking. Was her identity deliberately concealed? Was this secrecy a form of protection, ensuring that only the initiated knew her true role? Or was her memory erased by later rulers, leaving us only with the vivid residue of Cinnabar as a final, haunting trace? And yet, there is another possibility. Perhaps the absence of inscriptions is not an omission, but a statement. Perhaps the Red Queen was meant to exist beyond names and titles, her identity merging with the very concept of sacred femininity. If Pakal's tomb enshrined the legacy of kingship, then her tomb may have embodied the power of queenship, not as an individual, but as an eternal archetype. Standing in the chamber today, visitors often remark on the atmosphere, the lingering sense of awe, the feeling that the air itself carries a weight of mystery. The bones have long since been removed for study, but the traces of cinnabar still cling to the stone, radiating a faint, ghostly red. It is as though the queen remains present, her silence as eloquent as any inscription. And so the tomb of the Red Queen remains one of Mesoamerica's most enduring enigmas. A burial of breathtaking richness, yet cloaked in secrecy. A woman whose identity should have been proclaimed in glyphs and monuments, yet who lies nameless. A tomb awash in red, blurring the lines between death and life, history and myth. Who was she, truly? A queen? A consort? A priestess? Or something more? Was her burial meant to honor her legacy? Or to conceal it? And what other secrets might still lie hidden beneath the forest floor of Palenque, waiting to be uncovered? The mystery lingers, as vivid and unsettling as the cinnabar that once coated her bones. A reminder that the past does not always yield its truths easily. Some figures remain veiled, their identities obscured, leaving us to wonder, what stories lie just beyond our grasp, written not in glyphs or texts, but in silence, in color, in the shadows of forgotten tombs. From the crimson shadows of the Red Queen's tomb in Palenque, our journey now turns northward, across deserts and mountains, into the vast and arid landscapes of the American Southwest. It is here, at the base of Hidden Mountain, not far from Los Lunas, New Mexico, that one of the most puzzling artifacts in the United States rests, etched not on parchment or pottery, but into the living rock itself. Locals call it the Los Lunas Decalogue stone. At first glance, the stone appears unassuming, dark basalt, weathered by centuries of sun and wind. It lies tilted against the earth, partly concealed by the natural terrain, as though nature itself wished to guard its secret. But upon closer inspection, one sees the unmistakable marks of human hands, a long inscription, carefully carved, running across the rock's broad face. The characters are not Native American symbols, nor Spanish colonial script. Instead, they bear a strange resemblance to something far older and far more distant, the letters of ancient Semitic languages. The text, when translated, appears to be none other than a version of the Ten Commandments, rendered in a script resembling Paleo-Hebrew. For decades, this enigmatic inscription has ignited debate. Could such a text truly exist, carved into a stone in the deserts of New Mexico, thousands of miles from the Near East and long before Columbus ever set sail? Or is it, as some argue, a much more recent creation, the work of settlers or opportunists in centuries closer to our own? The questions begin with the stone's discovery. Accounts differ. Some say it was known to local shepherds and ranchers long before scholars took notice. By the mid-20th century, however, word of the mystery stone had spread beyond New Mexico. Archaeologists, linguists, and amateur historians began to visit, each offering interpretations of the text. To some, the inscription was evidence of a pre-Columbian crossing, perhaps ancient Israelites or Phoenicians who, by some unknown voyage, had reached the shores of the Americas long before recorded history would suggest. but others were cautious. The script, while resembling Paleo-Hebrew, did not match perfectly with inscriptions known from the ancient Near East. Some characters seemed oddly formed, as if copied imperfectly from a book or reference. Linguists noted peculiarities in grammar and structure that suggested a more modern hand. And yet, despite these doubts, the mystery persisted. For if the inscription were indeed ancient, its implications would be profound. Imagine for a moment the journey it would imply. Seafarers from the Old World navigating across the Atlantic, reaching unknown lands, and leaving behind a carved testament to their laws and faith. Such a scenario would rewrite not only American history, but the very story of global contact and exploration. Could the Lost Luna stone be a fragment of that lost chapter? There are other oddities to consider. The inscription is carved deeply into hard basalt, a labor that would have required time, effort, and tools suited for the task. Weathering patterns suggest some age, though determining exactly how long the inscription has been exposed remains difficult. The stone rests in a location not easily visible from afar, as though meant for a specific audience, or perhaps as a sacred marker known only to a select few. Mainstream scholarship, however, remains skeptical. Many suggest that the stone was carved in the 19th or early 20th century, perhaps by a settler familiar with biblical texts and ancient alphabets. During that era, fascination with biblical archaeology was widespread, and books reproducing ancient Hebrew scripts were readily available. Could an enthusiastic amateur, inspired by religious conviction or curiosity, have carved the Decalogue into stone as a kind of devotional act? If so, then the Los Lunas inscription is not an ancient mystery, but a modern artifact of faith and imagination. Yet others resist this explanation. The scale and depth of the carving suggest more than a casual pastime. And why here, in the isolated New Mexican desert, far from centers of biblical study? Some have argued that if it were indeed a hoax or modern creation, we might expect clearer documentation of its origin, or perhaps even a boast from the person responsible. Instead, the stone remains stubbornly silent, its creators unknown. In the absence of certainty, speculation flourishes. Could the stone represent evidence of lost migrations, perhaps a colony of ancient seafarers who vanished without record, leaving only this cryptic message behind? Some fringe theories even connect the Los Lunas stone to broader narratives of hidden histories, linking it to tales of the 10 lost tribes of Israel, or suggesting that Old World knowledge may have reached the Americas in ways yet undiscovered. And then there is the question of intent. If authentic, why carve the 10 Commandments here, on a lonely mountain slope? Was it a covenant marker, a ritual inscription, or a sacred reminder for a community far from home? Or was it meant for the land itself, a gesture of sanctification, binding Old World faith to New World soil? Even the skeptics admit that the stone's allure is undeniable. Visitors who make the trek to Hidden Mountain often describe the experience as uncanny. The inscription, stark against the basalt, radiates an atmosphere of mystery. Standing before it, one cannot help but feel a sense of dislocation, an impression that time and geography have been bent, placing the words of an ancient faith in a landscape far removed from their origins. Today, the Los Lunas Decalogue stone remains a contested relic. Protected behind a chain-link fence, it draws pilgrims of another sort. Curious travelers, seekers of hidden truths, and those who feel drawn to mysteries that resist explanation. Scholars continue to debate, yet no consensus emerges. The stone lingers in a liminal space, neither fully accepted as authentic nor entirely dismissed as fraudulent. What, then, are we to make of it? Is the Los Lunas stone a genuine echo of pre-Columbian contact, a forgotten chapter of transoceanic journeys that mainstream history has overlooked? Or is it a more recent creation, born of devotion, imagination, or deliberate deception? The answers remain elusive, and perhaps that is part of the stone's power. For in its silence, it forces us to confront the unknown, to recognize how much of the past lies hidden, waiting in landscapes we thought familiar. As the sun sets over Hidden Mountain, the basalt darkens, and the carved letters fade into shadow. They remain there still, etched into the earth, speaking across time in a language that may, or may not, belong to this land. And so we are left to wonder, what other messages might be waiting in the deserts of the Southwest, carved into stone, whispering of journeys and contacts long forgotten? Could the Decalogue stone be only one fragment of a much larger story, one that challenges the boundaries of history as we know it? From the rugged deserts and river valleys of the American Southwest, our journey now returns eastward, crossing continents, to a land of arid hills and fertile plains along the ancient Jordan Valley. Here lies a site that has quietly challenged our understanding of early human creativity and belief: Ain Ghazal. At first glance, it might seem like an ordinary Neolithic settlement: mud brick homes, storage pits, and traces of early agriculture. But buried beneath centuries of soil, archaeologists uncovered something far more extraordinary: a collection of human-sized statues, known today as the Ain Ghazal statues, dating back to roughly 6,500 to 7,000 BCE. The first encounter with these figures is striking. Standing upright, partially reconstructed from plaster, lime, and reed cores, they gaze outward with blank, haunting expressions. Their eyes, often hollow sockets once filled with bitumen, seem to follow the viewer, creating an unsettling sense of presence. These are not small talismans or symbolic figurines. They are monumental, carefully crafted representations of human form, each one painstakingly constructed with attention to proportion, posture, and detail. The craftsmanship itself speaks of a society willing to devote significant time, resources, and labor to creating objects that were neither functional nor utilitarian, but deeply symbolic. Ain Ghazal was no minor settlement. Its architecture reveals a community capable of organization and planning. Rectangular houses built of sun-dried mud brick, with internal courtyards, storage areas, and spaces that suggest communal activity. In such a context, the creation of these statues takes on added weight. They were not casual artistic exercises. Each figure may have represented an individual, an ancestor, or a deity. Some statues bear subtle scars or markings, hinting at ritual practices, while others are entirely abstracted, their features generalized yet eerily lifelike. What was the purpose of these statues? Were they guardians, witnesses to ceremonies, or symbols of collective memory? Or perhaps they were embodiments of the invisible, spirits, ancestors, or forces beyond the human realm. Archaeologists have proposed a variety of interpretations. The sheer number of statues and their deliberate placement suggest they were not intended for private devotion alone. Could they have been central to communal rituals, marking seasonal cycles, fertility rites, or burial practices? And yet, despite centuries of study, the truth remains elusive. The statues occupy a space between art, ritual, and memory, a liminal zone where practical function gives way to spiritual and symbolic meaning. Some scholars emphasize the technical mastery evident in these works. Constructing such statues required not only knowledge of materials, limestone plaster, reeds, and paint, but also an understanding of proportion, human anatomy, and even psychological presence. The hollowed eyes, for instance, invite interpretation. Were they intended to be filled during rituals to grant the statues a living gaze? Or were they deliberately empty, representing the unknown, the eternal, or the unseen aspects of existence. Each possibility opens doors to speculation, yet no definitive answer emerges. The cultural context of Ain Ghazal deepens the mystery. These statues predate formal writing systems, organized states, and monumental architecture typically associated with advanced civilizations. Yet they convey complex thought, symbolism, and a sense of identity. Could this represent one of the earliest instances of humans attempting to externalize consciousness, to materialize memory and meaning in forms that outlive the fleeting span of life? And if so, what does it reveal about the cognitive and social capacities of Neolithic peoples, often underestimated in conventional histories? Environmental factors may also hold clues. The Jordan Valley, with its reliable water sources and fertile soils, allowed for early farming and permanent settlement. But life in the Neolithic was fragile. Droughts, floods, and resource limitations imposed constant pressures. Perhaps the statues served as anchors, physical embodiments of community, resilience, or protection in a world of uncertainty. They may have represented both the continuity of life and the presence of ancestors, binding the living and the dead in a symbolic network that reinforced social cohesion. Yet the mystery deepens when considering the abrupt abandonment of the site. Archaeological evidence indicates that Ain Ghazal was suddenly deserted around 5000 BCE. Homes were left intact, personal objects abandoned, and the statues themselves were often buried or hidden. Why would a community go to such lengths to inter these carefully crafted figures? Was it a ritual of closure, a way to protect sacred objects from outsiders, or a response to environmental or social upheaval? The silence of the soil speaks louder than any inscription. The reasoning behind these acts remains largely speculative, open to interpretation, and deeply compelling. Another puzzle lies in the broader implications of the statues for human prehistory. At Ain Ghazal, we see evidence of abstract thought, social complexity, and symbolic expression occurring thousands of years before the rise of Mesopotamian city-states, Egyptian pyramids, or writing systems. These statues challenge linear narratives of cultural evolution, suggesting that sophisticated symbolic behavior emerged early and independently in diverse regions. Could the Ain Ghazal figures be evidence of a parallel cultural trajectory, a hidden strand of human ingenuity that has often been overlooked? Comparisons to other Neolithic figurines amplify the intrigue. Unlike the small, often stylized figurines found across Europe and the Near East, the Ain Ghazal statues are monumental, meticulously constructed, and strikingly lifelike. Some display gendered features, others abstracted or generalized forms. What motivated this variation? Were the differences functional, symbolic, or tied to social status? And what rituals or beliefs dictated which forms were created, preserved, or buried? The answers remain tantalizingly out of reach. Perhaps the most haunting element of the statues is their presence, the way they occupy space, gaze outward, and silently witness the passage of millennia. They are at once intimate and alien, human yet otherworldly. Standing before them, one senses a dialogue between past and present, a connection across thousands of years that challenges assumptions about who we are, how we remember, and why we create. Each statue is a question in physical form. Who made you, for whom, and to what purpose? Ain Ghazal also invites reflection on the fragility of cultural memory. These statues survived millennia of erosion, human activity, and neglect, only to be rediscovered in modern times. They reveal the extent to which history is both preserved and lost, a delicate interplay between chance, environment, and human care. How many other societies produced comparable symbolic artifacts, now erased from the record? What has been lost to time, and what remains buried, waiting for discovery? As we contemplate these questions, the Ghazal statues emerge not merely as archaeological artifacts, but as witnesses to human thought and expression at a formative stage of civilization. They blur the boundaries between art, ritual, and social record, standing as enduring enigmas that invite us to reconsider the depth of human imagination in the Neolithic era. The Jordan Valley today is quiet, winds sweeping across olive groves and desert hills, yet beneath the surface lies the legacy of Ghazal. The statues endure, frozen in plaster and reed, speaking to us in a language older than writing itself. They remind us that long before monumental cities or empires, humans sought to understand existence, to represent themselves, and to bridge the temporal chasm between life and memory. And so, the mystery of Ghazal remains unresolved. Each figure buried, reconstructed, or displayed prompts new questions. What were the beliefs and fears of the people who made them? What rituals accompanied their creation and burial? And what does their existence reveal about the capacity for abstract thought, social cohesion, and symbolic expression in humanity's earliest chapters? In standing before these ancient forms, we are invited not just to observe, but to imagine, to engage with a civilization that flourished long before history was written, and to consider what other forgotten human stories may lie hidden, waiting to be uncovered. From the arid hills and ancient plains of Jordan, where the Ghazal statues silently testify to the spiritual and symbolic sophistication of early societies, our journey now shifts westward to the deep, azure waters of the eastern Mediterranean. Here, off the coast of modern-day Turkey, near Uluburun, lies one of the most extraordinary archaeological discoveries in maritime history, a late Bronze Age shipwreck, its cargo a remarkable window into a world of trade, wealth, and cultural complexity over 3 millennia ago. The Uluburun shipwreck, resting some 45 meters below the surface of the Mediterranean, first came to light in the late 1980s, its timbers and scattered artifacts preserved by centuries of sediment and the cold, dark currents of the sea. What makes this find so compelling is not simply the ship itself, but the extraordinary cargo it carried, a microcosm of the Bronze Age world. Dozens of copper and tin ingots, the raw materials of bronze, lie intermingled with Canaanite jars, exotic ivory from Africa, ostrich eggs, and intricately carved ceremonial objects. The diversity of these items suggests a vast interconnected network of trade, spanning from the Aegean to Egypt, Mesopotamia, and even regions along the eastern Mediterranean coastline that remain partially mysterious to us today. Each object tells a story. The copper ingots, shaped with remarkable uniformity, hint at standardized production methods, possibly designed for trade or exchange across great distances. Tin, far rarer than copper, reflects both the value of the cargo and the sophistication of the economic systems that linked distant civilizations. Among the exotic artifacts are elephant tusks, hippo teeth, and Canaanite jars filled with resins, oils, and perfumes, luxury items that underscore the wealth and ambition of the ship's owners or sponsors. This was not a vessel ferrying ordinary goods. It was a floating repository of power, culture, and technological prowess. The ship itself remains partly enigmatic. Its hull fragments, meticulously reconstructed from underwater excavation, reveal advanced shipbuilding techniques for the late Bronze Age. The planking, joinery, and use of mortise and tenon construction indicate knowledge of weight distribution, stability, and cargo management, suggesting that the shipbuilders possessed both practical skill and an intimate understanding of the sea. Yet questions linger. Who commissioned this vessel? Was it a merchant, a ruler, or a state-sponsored expedition? And what fateful circumstances led to its sinking so close to the Anatolian coastline? One of the most intriguing aspects of the Uluburun find is the presence of objects from multiple cultures, all aboard a single vessel. Egyptian scarabs, Cypriot pottery, Mycenaean tools, and Levantine jewelry form a heterogeneous assemblage, reflecting a level of cultural interaction and exchange that challenges simple notions of isolated ancient societies. Did the ship represent a commercial enterprise, a diplomatic gift exchange, or perhaps even a more complex network of political alliances and tributes? How did these diverse cultures negotiate value, authenticity, and meaning in such exchanges? And what knowledge or influence traveled along with the material goods? Analysis of the cargo also raises technical questions. Many of the copper ingots bear marks or symbols, likely indicating origin, quality, or ownership. The presence of tin, a critical component for producing bronze, points to sophisticated metallurgical knowledge. Could the trade of such materials have influenced the rise and fall of city-states, the development of weaponry, or the evolution of art and ceremonial objects? The shipwreck becomes not just a snapshot of commerce, but a lens through which to examine the technological, economic, and social dynamics of the late Bronze Age Mediterranean world. Yet, despite meticulous study, mysteries abound. The exact route of the ship, the identity of its crew, and the circumstances surrounding its sinking remain largely speculative. Currents, weather, and potential conflict may have played a role, but no contemporary record explicitly references such a voyage. We are left to interpret the fragments, the position of the cargo, the distribution of artifacts, and subtle marks on the hull, each offering tantalizing hints yet withholding definitive answers. The Uluburun shipwreck also invites reflection on the broader nature of human interaction in the ancient world. Here, thousands of years ago, people undertook complex logistical and commercial operations, navigating uncertain seas to connect distant societies. They traded not just goods, but ideas, beliefs, and technologies. The ship becomes a metaphor for the interconnectedness of human civilizations, a floating testament to curiosity, ingenuity, and ambition. And yet, it also serves as a reminder of the fragility of these networks, how quickly they could be disrupted by natural forces, misfortune, or human conflict, leaving only scattered traces for posterity. Among the most haunting artifacts are the exotic luxury items, ivory, glass, and precious metals that were clearly intended for display, ritual, or high-status consumption. These objects hint at social hierarchies and cultural values, suggesting that wealth was expressed not only in quantity, but in the symbolic or ceremonial significance of materials. How did those who commissioned or received such items interpret their meaning? Did they see them purely as wealth, or did these objects carry spiritual, political, or even cosmological weight? The shipwreck also underscores the complexity of ancient knowledge. Transporting such diverse cargo required understanding of packing, preservation, navigation, and risk management, skills honed over generations. Sailors and merchants were not merely passive actors, they actively shaped the economic and cultural landscapes of their time. And yet, the ship sank, leaving behind a moment frozen in time, a puzzle for modern researchers piecing together human ambition, ingenuity, and vulnerability. Standing before the recovered artifacts today, one can almost imagine the voyage itself, the creak of timbers in the wind, the sun glinting off bronze ingots, the careful stowage of fragile goods, the conversations and calculations of a crew navigating uncertain waters. And beneath this human drama, the Mediterranean stretches, both timeless and unknowable, a silent witness to ambition, disaster, and resilience across millennia. Uluburun invites us to reconsider the scale and sophistication of Bronze Age maritime trade. It challenges assumptions that early civilizations were isolated or rudimentary, revealing instead a vibrant, interconnected world where commerce, artistry, and diplomacy coexisted on a grand scale. Each artifact is a fragment of a larger story, hinting at networks of exchange, knowledge, and cultural influence that shaped the course of history in ways we are only beginning to understand. And yet, even with careful excavation and study, many questions remain. Who exactly sailed this ship, and for what precise purpose? How many other vessels traversed these waters with cargo equally rich and diverse, now lost to time? And what can this shipwreck tell us about the invisible currents of human ambition, risk, and ingenuity that have propelled civilizations forward for thousands of years? The Uluburun shipwreck, submerged and silent, remains a window into a world both familiar and alien. Its artifacts speak of skill, wealth, and connectivity, but also of mystery, fragility, and the unknowable choices of those who lived thousands of years before us. As we ponder these questions, we are reminded that every object recovered from the depths carries not only a story of trade and craftsmanship, but a reflection of human curiosity, courage, and the enduring desire to connect across the vastness of space and time. From the turquoise waters and sunken mysteries of the Mediterranean, our journey now carries us thousands of miles across the Americas to the arid coastal deserts of northern Peru. Here, amid wind-sculpted dunes and the ancient river valleys of the Chicama and Moche regions, lies one of South America's most compelling archaeological sites, the El Brujo complex. Though its name, the Sorcerer, evokes mystery and legend, the site itself speaks volumes about the sophistication, artistry, and ritual life of pre-Columbian civilizations long before the rise of the Inca Empire. El Brujo is dominated by monumental adobe structures, pyramids of sun-baked bricks rising from the desert floor, their surfaces etched with reliefs that hint at stories of power, ritual, and the sacred. Among these, the Huacachau Viejo Pyramid holds particular significance, not only for its imposing scale, but for the intricate murals that survive along its walls. These murals, painted in vivid reds, yellows, and blacks, depict figures in elaborate ceremonial dress, processions, and scenes that suggest both mythological and historical narratives. As sunlight shifts across the adobe surfaces, the reliefs seem to animate, whispering of a world where politics, religion, and artistry were inseparably entwined. The most extraordinary discovery at El Brujo, however, lies buried within one of its chambers, the tomb of the so-called Lady of Kau. Here, archaeologists uncovered the remains of a high-ranking woman, preserved with remarkable care, surrounded by ceremonial objects, jewelry, and remnants of ritual. Her presence challenges assumptions about gender and power in ancient Andean societies, suggesting that women could hold not only spiritual authority but political influence, shaping the destiny of their communities. Who was she? A priestess, a ruler, or both? The evidence is tantalizing but inconclusive, leaving the imagination to bridge gaps left by centuries of silence. The funerary artifacts themselves offer both insight and mystery. Gold and silver ornaments, finely crafted textiles, and ceremonial tools were interred alongside the Lady of Kau, indicating a status of extraordinary importance. Yet, beyond wealth and status, some items appear to carry symbolic or ritual significance. Ceramic vessels painted with enigmatic scenes, elaborate headdresses, and objects whose meaning is still debated among scholars. Were these intended to guide the deceased in the afterlife, or to convey messages about her role within the living community? And what beliefs underpinned the selection and placement of these objects, echoing cosmologies that are only partially understood today? The murals of Huacachau Viejo complement the tomb, offering glimpses into the ceremonial life of the Moche culture. Scenes of sacrifice, ritual combat, and feasting suggest a society deeply engaged with both the spiritual and the social. Some scholars interpret these depictions as allegories, encoding moral, religious, or political instruction. Others see them as literal records of events, chronicling battles, alliances, and rites of passage. The precise meaning remains elusive, but the artistry conveys a culture highly attuned to symbolism, hierarchy, and narrative, a civilization capable of encoding complex ideas in color, form, and space. Yet, despite these remarkable finds, El Brujo holds its secrets close. The construction techniques, while impressive, leave questions about labor organization, engineering knowledge, and the social systems that sustained monumental building projects. How were these massive adobe structures conceived and constructed? What knowledge of materials, climate, and structural integrity guided their creation? And how did such feats of engineering coexist with the spiritual and artistic ambitions of the society that built them? One of the most intriguing enigmas is the interplay between the tangible and the intangible. The Lady of Cow's tomb, the murals, and ceremonial artifacts suggest a worldview that blurred the boundaries between life and death, human and divine, ordinary and extraordinary. Did the Mochi conceive of power as inseparable from ritual? Were these practices intended to influence the natural world, to maintain social cohesion, or to communicate with forces beyond human comprehension? And if so, how were these rituals learned, transmitted, and preserved across generations? El Brujo invites contemplation, not only of past achievements, but also of human curiosity and interpretation. How do we reconstruct lives, beliefs, and societies from fragments of pottery, adobe walls, and skeletal remains? What knowledge, skills, and wisdom were lost with the passage of time? And how might surviving artifacts hint at broader networks of influence, innovation, and belief? Each excavation, each carefully catalogued object, offers partial answers and provokes new questions, drawing us deeper into the mystery of a civilization that thrived long before modern records could tell its story. As the sun sets over the arid valleys and pyramids of El Brujo, casting long shadows across painted walls and buried tombs, the site remains both a monument and a riddle. What secrets of ritual, power, and human ingenuity still lie hidden beneath the sands? And what can this singular place teach us about the broader narrative of human civilization, where leadership, spirituality, and artistry converge in ways that continue to challenge and inspire? In the silent desert of northern Peru, history whispers its story, urging us to listen carefully to the echoes of lives long past. From the sun-scorched deserts of Peru, our journey returns to the gentle, rolling hills of central France, where a very different kind of mystery awaits, one carved not in adobe or stone, but pressed into clay and whispered across decades of controversy. Nestled near the small village of Glozel, in the Allier department, archaeologists stumbled upon an extraordinary assemblage in the 1920s. Hundreds of artifacts, including tablets, pottery fragments, figurines, and inscribed objects, which would soon ignite one of the most heated debates in modern archaeology. These finds, seemingly modest at first glance, would challenge assumptions about European prehistory, prompting questions that remain unresolved nearly a century later. The Glozel tablets, small clay slabs etched with enigmatic symbols, are the centerpiece of this mystery. Some bear incisions resembling letters, numbers, or pictograms, while others display geometric patterns or sequences whose purpose remains unclear. Initially, scholars were baffled. Could these markings represent an unknown system of writing? If so, what language or culture had produced them, and why? Early investigators proposed dates ranging from the Neolithic to the medieval period, with each hypothesis supported by fragmentary evidence yet challenged by equally compelling counter-arguments. The ambiguity of context, stratigraphy, provenance, and authenticity only deepened the allure. The discovery itself is dramatic. A local farmer, Émile Fradin, uncovered the first artifacts while tending his fields, and soon a collection of tablets, ceramic vessels, and clay figurines emerged from the soil. Some objects depict human forms, others animals, and a few even seem to encode narrative sequences or ritual symbolism. Each artifact carries the weight of uncertainty. Are these genuine relics of a lost European culture, or elaborate hoaxes created to confound and mislead? The answer remains elusive, and the debate has persisted in academic circles for nearly a century, shaping perceptions of Glozel as both a site of potential revelation and controversy. Scholars have attempted to decode the tablets in various ways. Some suggest that the symbols constitute a script, perhaps representing an early attempt at record-keeping or ritual notation. Others argue for purely symbolic or ceremonial interpretation, where marks indicate spiritual or calendrical significance rather than phonetic content. In this light, the tablets might have been used in rites, divination, or social organization, practices deeply embedded in the daily and spiritual life of a prehistoric community. The precise meaning, however, remains locked within the clay, defying definitive translation. Adding to the intrigue, the site contained thousands of additional artifacts, ceramics, stone tools, and small clay figurines, many bearing motifs that echo the designs on the tablets. These items suggest a culture attentive to artistic expression, ritual practice, and perhaps even literacy in a symbolic sense. Could Glozel represent evidence of a previously unrecognized European civilization, advanced in ways not anticipated for its time? Or do the artifacts instead reflect a localized tradition, a creative experiment in symbolic communication that left few traces beyond the immediate site? The controversy surrounding Glozel only intensifies the narrative. Initial excitement in the 1920s gave way to skepticism and, in some cases, outright accusations of forgery. Scientific analyses over the decades, ranging from radiocarbon dating to microscopic examination, have produced mixed results, sometimes supporting the antiquity of the objects, sometimes raising further doubts. This tension between evidence and interpretation fuels the site's enduring mystery. Every new test, every new analysis seems to generate as many questions as answers. Yet for all the debate, the objects themselves retain an undeniable presence. The etched lines on the tablets, precise and deliberate, speak of intentionality, skill, and purpose. The ceramic vessels, often decorated with incised patterns, suggest ritual or symbolic use. The figurines, stylized yet evocative, hint at religious belief, social structure, or even mythic storytelling. These artifacts allow us to imagine lives long past, communities negotiating survival, spirituality, and creativity, even as we acknowledge the limits of our understanding. Glozel also raises broader questions about human curiosity and the interpretation of history. How do we distinguish genuine artifacts from potential hoaxes, especially when documentation is incomplete or contested? How should we weigh conflicting evidence or reconcile material findings with prevailing historical narratives? And what might Glozel reveal about Europe's prehistoric societies if its tablets and figurines are indeed authentic? Insights into symbolic thought, social complexity, or cultural exchange previously unrecognized in this region? The environment surrounding Glozel adds another layer to the mystery. The gentle French countryside, now dotted with farms and forests, would have provided a rich mosaic of resources for a prehistoric community: fertile soil, water sources, and raw materials for crafting tools and pottery. How did the inhabitants of this region organize their labor, rituals, and social life? Could the tablets themselves have played a role in education, record-keeping, or religious observance? The answers are tantalizingly just out of reach, preserved in the objects themselves, yet veiled by time. Walking through the site today, one is struck by the tension between the ordinary and the extraordinary. The village of Glozel, serene and quiet, belies the magnitude of what lies beneath its fields. The tablets, figurines, and pottery fragments, carefully excavated and catalogued, are silent witnesses to a culture that, if authentic, predates much of recorded European history. Their presence challenges assumptions. inviting reflection on the diversity, ingenuity, and imagination of early human societies. Glozel also embodies the uncertainties inherent in archaeology itself. The interplay between discovery and skepticism, evidence and interpretation, reminds us that history is often reconstructed from fragments, piecing together stories from objects, context, and imagination. What did the people of Glozel believe, fear, or celebrate? How did they communicate across generations? And what knowledge might have been lost with the passage of time? Each tablet, each carved line, is both a revelation and a question, a puzzle that continues to resist full resolution. As we consider the Glozel tablets and the broader assemblage of artifacts, we are reminded that human history is rarely linear or complete. Across continents and millennia, communities experimented with symbolism, ritual, and expression in ways that often leave only partial traces. Glozel challenges our assumptions, asking us to look closely, think critically, and remain open to the possibility that history is richer, stranger, and more complex than we can easily imagine. And so, in the quiet fields of Allier, amid clay, stone, and time's sediment, the mystery of Glozel endures. What stories are still hidden in the lines of the tablets, in the patterns of the vessels, in the forms of the figurines? What can this enigmatic site teach us about the ways humans have sought to understand, record, and shape their world long before written history as we know it? The answers remain elusive, but the invitation to wonder, explore, and question is as vivid now as it was nearly a century ago. From the quiet fields of central France, where the Glozel tablets lie half-buried in history's sediment, our journey moves southeast to the Anatolian plateau of modern-day Turkey, to a site that has captivated archaeologists and historians for decades, Çatalhöyük. Spread across the Konya Plain, this sprawling Neolithic settlement rises not from monumental stone temples, but from tightly clustered mud brick homes, densely packed in a pattern that suggests both practical ingenuity and complex social organization. Walking among its remnants today, one can almost imagine the hum of daily life, smoke rising from clay ovens, children weaving through narrow alleyways, and the rhythmic cadence of artisans shaping clay, bone, and obsidian into tools, figurines, and decorative motifs. Excavations at Çatalhöyük, initiated in the 1960s and continuing into the present, have revealed a settlement astonishing in both scale and sophistication. At its peak, it housed thousands of inhabitants, living in a labyrinth of interlocking homes accessed from rooftops rather than streets. The absence of formal roads or defensive walls raises intriguing questions about community structure and social cohesion. How did people negotiate conflict, hierarchy, and collaboration in such an intimate, interconnected space? The arrangement of dwellings, sharing walls, courtyards, and storage, speaks to a society attuned to cooperation, yet also hints at potential tensions and complexities that remain invisible in the archaeological record. One of the most striking aspects of Çatalhöyük is its artistry. Walls within the homes are adorned with murals depicting hunting scenes, animals, geometric motifs, and abstract symbols, while clay figurines of humans and animals suggest spiritual or ritual significance. Many of these representations are female forms, interpreted by some scholars as evidence of fertility worship or a reverence for the cycles of life. Others argue for more nuanced interpretations. Could these figures encode social, political, or cosmological knowledge? The presence of repeated motifs and careful placement within domestic and ceremonial spaces hints at a symbolic literacy, a culture capable of abstract thought and long-term cultural memory. Yet the precise meanings of these images remain frustratingly elusive, leaving room for speculation without clear resolution. Çatalhöyük also challenges our understanding of early urbanism. Unlike contemporary sites in Mesopotamia, there are no monumental temples or palaces. Instead, ritual seems to be interwoven with daily life, with shrines found within homes, featuring altars, figurines, and animal remains. Could this indicate a society in which spiritual and domestic life were inseparable? Were the homes themselves sacred spaces, embodying communal values and cosmological beliefs? These questions highlight how Çatalhöyük resists easy classification, offering a glimpse into a civilization that operated according to principles markedly different from those of later states and empires. The artifacts themselves provide further intrigue. Obsidian tools, beads, and bone implements suggest not only self-sufficiency, but also participation in extensive trade networks, linking Çatalhöyük to regions hundreds of kilometers away. Exotic materials hint at exchanges of both goods and ideas, raising the possibility that this settlement was a node in a wider prehistoric network of interaction, innovation, and cultural transmission. How much of Çatalhöyük's sophistication emerged independently, and how much reflects influences from distant regions? The interplay of local ingenuity and broader connectivity is part of the site's enduring fascination. Burials at Çatalhöyük reveal another layer of mystery. Inhabitants were interred beneath the floors of their homes, often with offerings, jewelry, or tools. The proximity of the living and the dead suggests a conceptual framework in which ancestors remained intimately tied to domestic life, influencing or protecting the household. How did such practices shape social identity, familial memory, or spiritual belief? And what do these burials reveal about attitudes toward mortality, status, and the afterlife in a community that predates monumental religion and codified law? Equally compelling are the questions raised by the settlement's sudden decline. Around 5700 BCE, Çatalhöyük was abandoned for reasons that remain speculative. Environmental pressures, shifts in climate, resource depletion, or social change may have contributed, but no definitive cause has been identified. What knowledge, rituals, or technologies vanished with its inhabitants, leaving only the material traces we can study today? Every artifact, wall painting, and burial is a fragment of a larger story, hinting at human ingenuity, adaptation, and symbolic thought, yet leaving us with profound uncertainties. Çatalhöyük also invites reflection on how we interpret ancient societies. Its dense, communal layout, the integration of ritual and domestic life, and its complex material culture challenge conventional narratives about the evolution of urbanism, hierarchy, and religion. Here, we see evidence that human societies could achieve remarkable sophistication without monumental architecture or codified political systems. How many other early communities operated on principles we have yet to recognize, leaving only subtle traces in the archaeological record? And how do we reconcile these findings with the linear histories often presented in textbooks? Walking through Çatalhöyük today, one can feel the layered presence of thousands of lives, parents and children, artisans and hunters, ritual practitioners and traders. The dust-laden rooftops, narrow passageways, and colorful murals evoke a community deeply engaged with both the material and symbolic worlds. And yet, despite decades of excavation, many questions remain unresolved. What did these images and objects truly signify to their makers? How did their inhabitants conceptualize the natural and spiritual worlds? And what can their way of life teach us about human adaptability, creativity, and the foundations of civilization? In contemplating Çatalhöyük, we are reminded that the story of humanity is far more intricate than a simple progression from simple to complex. Across the Anatolian plateau, and indeed across the globe, early communities experimented with settlement, symbolism, and social organization in ways that were innovative, meaningful, and sometimes ephemeral. Çatalhöyük stands as a testament to the depth of human ingenuity long before the rise of kings, empires, or written law. As the sun casts its amber light over the remnants of this ancient settlement, the mystery remains palpable. What lessons lie encoded in its walls, its murals, its burials, and its artifacts? How did this dense, interconnected community negotiate life, death, ritual, and memory? The answers may remain beyond our reach, yet the very act of exploration, of asking these questions and listening to the echoes of the past, ensures that Çatalhöyük continues to speak, softly, insistently, and mysteriously, to all who seek to understand the earliest chapters of human history. From the mud brick labyrinth of Çatalhöyük, where rooftops once connected domestic life to ritual practice, our journey now moves northwest across the Balkans to the fertile plains along the Danube River, where another remarkable Neolithic culture took root, the Vinča culture. Flourishing between roughly 5700 and 4500 BCE, Vinča represents one of Europe's earliest and most enigmatic civilizations. Its settlements, sprawling and intricately organized, reveal a society that, while distant in both time and geography from Anatolia, shared strikingly sophisticated approaches to urban planning, symbolism, and material culture. The Vinča settlements, often situated on elevated terraces above the river, were densely clustered, with houses carefully constructed from timber and clay, some featuring multiple rooms and elaborate hearths. Streets, if they existed, were narrow, winding between homes that shared walls and communal spaces. Such a layout suggests a community deeply interconnected, with social cohesion and cooperation essential for daily survival. How did inhabitants manage shared resources, negotiate conflict, and maintain social order in such a close-knit environment? The answers are hidden, embedded in the archaeological traces of walls, storage pits, and refuse heaps. Yet the very arrangement of the settlements speaks to intentional planning and cultural sophistication. What distinguishes Vinča is the extraordinary corpus of artifacts left behind. Ceramic figurines, often depicting humans, animals, or composite forms, are renowned for their artistry and abstraction. Many of these figurines appear female, leading some scholars to suggest fertility rituals or goddess worship. Yet others see them as representations of status, ancestry, or even abstract concepts, symbols that conveyed ideas about identity, spirituality, or cosmology. The repetition of forms across multiple sites implies a shared symbolic language, a cultural framework understood across generations and communities. Could these figurines have served as mediators between the human and the spiritual? Or were they instruments of social cohesion, reminding inhabitants of shared beliefs and values? Vinča is perhaps even more intriguing for the presence of one of the earliest known proto-writing systems in Europe, the Vinča symbols. These incised marks appear on pottery, figurines, and tablets, and while their precise meaning remains undeciphered, their very existence suggests a culture exploring representation beyond the tangible world. Were these symbols a form of record-keeping, a spiritual or ritual script, or a system of communication that eventually vanished without leaving descendants in later European writing systems? Each symbol is a fragment of thought, a window into the cognitive world of a people who navigated daily life, ritual, and social interaction with remarkable sophistication. Beyond figurines and symbols, the Vinča material record also includes tools and ornaments crafted from stone, bone, and copper. The emergence of metallurgy in this culture is particularly striking. Copper objects appear centuries before widespread metal use elsewhere in Europe, hinting at experimentation, technical knowledge, and trade networks extending across the continent. Were these early metallurgists pioneers in understanding the properties of metals, and did their innovations influence neighboring communities? Or did Vinča remain largely self-contained, developing skills independently within its fertile plains. Trade and connectivity are further hinted at by the presence of exotic materials. Obsidian, seashells, and other non-local items found in Vinča settlements suggest far-reaching exchange networks, linking communities along rivers and across plains. How extensive were these interactions? Did they merely provide raw materials, or did they also facilitate the transfer of ideas, rituals, and artistic conventions? These possibilities elevate Vinča from a local curiosity to a participant in a broader, interconnected Neolithic world, challenging assumptions about the isolation of early European communities. The architecture of Vinča settlements also raises profound questions about daily life and ritual. Homes were often rebuilt repeatedly over the same footprints, creating mounds that preserved layers of occupation over centuries. Some structures show evidence of special purpose, shrines, storage facilities, or workshops, suggesting a nuanced understanding of space and function. How did these Neolithic people balance domestic, economic, and spiritual needs within the same architectural environment? And what social structures enabled long-term stability, cooperation, and cultural continuity across generations? Vinča's burial practices offer additional glimpses into the worldview of its people. While not as monumental as later European tumuli, graves often contain personal ornaments, figurines, or tools, signaling beliefs in continuity, status, and perhaps an afterlife. The placement of these objects, the care with which individuals were interred, and the symbolic motifs used in both life and death hint at a culture deeply invested in the intertwining of memory, identity, and spirituality. How did these practices shape the communal ethos, and what might they reveal about the Vinča understanding of the natural and supernatural worlds? Despite its achievements, the Vinča culture eventually declined, its settlements abandoned or transformed into smaller, less centralized communities. The causes remain unclear. Environmental shifts, resource pressures, social change, or external conflict may have played roles. What knowledge, rituals, and artistic traditions were lost in this transformation? And how does the ephemeral nature of these communities alter our understanding of early European civilization, which often appears dominated by later monumental societies? As we study Vinča today, walking among the remnants of its mounds, figurines, and inscribed symbols, the sense of human ingenuity, imagination, and cultural depth is palpable. Here is a society that balanced daily survival with symbolic expression, domestic routine with ritual significance, and practical skills with experimental metallurgy. Its achievements, though often overlooked in favor of more famous contemporaneous cultures, challenge conventional narratives about the evolution of urbanism, literacy, and artistry in Neolithic Europe. Vinča reminds us that human history is a tapestry of experimentation, adaptation, and symbolic thought. Across plains and rivers, communities like this one explored the boundaries of social cohesion, artistic expression, and technological innovation long before written history defined civilization in more familiar terms. Each artifact, each layer of settlement, and each enigmatic symbol is an invitation to contemplate the minds and lives of those who lived thousands of years ago, people who crafted complex societies, communicated abstract ideas, and engaged with both the material and spiritual worlds with sophistication and intent. Standing on the Danube terraces today, it is easy to sense the echoes of the Vinča people, the rhythm of daily work, the reverence embedded in figurines, and the careful etchings of symbols that continue to puzzle modern eyes. What stories, beliefs, and knowledge were carried within their communities? How much of their wisdom vanished with time, and what traces remain to inform our understanding of humanity's earliest chapters in Europe? The Vinča culture endures as both a testament and a mystery, a civilization that invites us to look closely, listen intently, and remain open to the unspoken depth of human history. From the fertile plains and river terraces of Europe, where communities like Vinča experimented with social organization and symbolic expression, our exploration now shifts eastward, across vast continental expanses, to the archipelago of Japan. Here, rising from the landscape in quiet, monumental forms, are the Kofun burial mounds, ancient earthen structures that dominate parts of the Japanese countryside, bearing witness to a civilization whose reach and influence are still only partially understood. The Kofun, literally ancient tombs, are remarkable in scale and design. Some rise over 100 meters in length, shaped in distinctive keyhole patterns visible even from the air, while others take the form of circular or square mounds. Surrounding many of these mounds are moats, ditches, or ceremonial spaces, hinting at a deliberate intention to demarcate sacred ground. As the sun glances across these earthen silhouettes, one cannot help but sense a deliberate interplay between the natural and the constructed, between memory and monument. These mounds were more than graves. They were statements, manifestations of power, belief, and identity etched into the very terrain. Constructed between the 3rd and 7th centuries CE, the Kofun were built during a period of considerable political consolidation in Japan. They served as tombs for elite individuals, rulers, or perhaps legendary figures whose lives shaped emerging state structures. Yet despite centuries of study, much about these mounds remains elusive. What motivated their precise forms? How were such massive projects coordinated with the technology and labor available at the time? And what messages were intended to endure in these monumental earthen sculptures? Inside the Kofun, archaeologists have uncovered haniwa, clay figures arranged around the mounds. These figures depict humans, animals, dwellings, and sometimes fantastical or hybrid forms. Haniwa are enigmatic. Some scholars interpret them as protective guardians for the deceased, while others see them as ritual offerings or representations of the social world that the interred once commanded. The figures, with their deliberate placement and recurring motifs, suggest a sophisticated symbolic language, one in which death, status, and spiritual cosmology are intricately intertwined. Could these silent guardians convey beliefs about the afterlife, about power, or even about the cosmos itself? Artifacts recovered from Kofun tombs further deepen the mystery. Weapons, mirrors, jewelry, and ceremonial objects provide glimpses into the lives of those interred, yet they also raise questions about trade, influence, and technology. Some items reveal connections to the Asian mainland, indicating that these early Japanese elites were part of broader networks of exchange and cultural contact. How far-reaching were these networks? And to what degree did ideas, rituals, or artistic styles travel alongside tangible goods? And yet, for all their splendor, many tombs remain unopened or partially studied, leaving large gaps in the narrative. The sheer size and organization of the largest mounds suggest centralized authority and a capacity for mobilizing labor on an impressive scale. The largest, such as the Daisen Kofun, believed to house Emperor Nintoku, span hundreds of meters and required careful planning, coordination, and sustained effort over decades. How did these early rulers manage such monumental undertakings? What social, religious, or political imperatives drove the construction of tombs so massive that they still dominate the landscape today? The answers are partly material and partly interpretive, woven from earth, clay, and ceremonial practice. Yet, the Kofun are not merely historical monuments. They are riddles suspended in time. The interiors of many mounds are shrouded in mystery. Wooden coffins, stone chambers, and burial goods are often hidden beneath layers of earth, preserved yet inaccessible. Archaeologists must piece together narratives from incomplete evidence, extrapolating beliefs, practices, and societal structures from fragments. What rituals accompanied interment? How did the living commemorate the dead? And how might these practices reflect broader cosmologies, social hierarchies, and cultural interactions with neighboring regions? Environmental and geographic context also shapes our understanding. The mounds are situated in fertile plains, along rivers or on strategic elevations, indicating choices influenced by both practicality and symbolism. Could the placement of the Kofun relate to viewsheds, territorial claims, or spiritual landscapes? And what does this suggest about the relationship between humans, the environment, and memory in ancient Japan? The careful integration of these tombs into the landscape speaks to a sophisticated awareness of spatial and symbolic relationships. The Kofun period remains a fascinating paradox, monumental yet mysterious, regional yet connected, elaborately constructed yet leaving questions about the people who built them. Each mound, haniwa, and artifact invites speculation about identity, power, ritual, and belief. Were these mounds designed primarily as markers of political authority, as spiritual gateways, or as enduring narratives of human experience? Perhaps they served all these purposes, intertwined in ways modern observers can only begin to imagine. Standing amidst the gentle slopes of a Kofun, it is possible to sense the passage of centuries, the weight of human intention, and the enduring presence of those commemorated within. The mounds challenge conventional historical narratives, reminding us that monumental architecture is not exclusive to civilizations of Mesopotamia, the Mediterranean, or the Americas. Rather, it emerges wherever communities invest labor, ritual, and imagination in marking existence, memory, and meaning. As shadows lengthen across the earthen contours, the Kofun leave us with lingering questions. What knowledge, beliefs, and cultural expressions vanished with the builders, preserved only in the silent forms of earth and clay? How did these societies navigate the tension between life, death, and legacy? And what might still be hidden beneath these massive mounds, awaiting discovery, analysis, or interpretation? The Kofun burial mounds endure as both testament and enigma, inviting us to contemplate a world where power, ritual, and human aspiration took monumental form, yet remain partly beyond our understanding. In their quiet, enduring presence, they whisper of civilizations that shaped human experience long before history was fully recorded. A mystery, patiently waiting for those who seek to uncover its story. From the ancient landscapes of Japan, where the Kofun mounds rose as silent monuments to power and ritual, our journey now crosses the Pacific to the forests and plains of Minnesota, where a weathered slab of stone rests quietly against the backdrop of rolling hills and dense woodland. This is the Kensington Runestone, a mysterious artifact whose inscriptions continue to ignite debate and fascination, bridging questions of exploration, culture, and history. The runestone is an unassuming object at first glance, a slab of gray waka, roughly 3 feet tall, etched with runic characters that trace a story, or perhaps a record, through a sequence of symbols unfamiliar to the region's known histories. The inscriptions claim to document a Scandinavian expedition in 1362, centuries before Columbus crossed the Atlantic, offering tantalizing hints of a narrative that, if true, could rewrite conventional understandings of early exploration in North America. Yet the stone's discovery in 1898 by farmer Olof Oman, while plowing his field, immediately introduced questions that persist to this day. Scholars and enthusiasts alike have pored over the markings, attempting to discern language, context, and intent. The runes themselves appear to reflect a mix of medieval Swedish dialect and local innovation, suggesting a story of explorers navigating unknown territories, encountering challenges, and leaving their record behind for posterity. But the stone's authenticity has been fiercely debated. Some argue it is a genuine remnant of pre-Columbian contact. Others assert it is a clever forgery, born from a combination of linguistic knowledge, local pride, or folklore. The tension between these interpretations only deepens the intrigue, inviting us to examine not just the artifact, but the human impulses to discover, to explain, and to question. What draws observers to the Kensington Runestone is not merely the possibility of early Scandinavian voyages. It is the stone's enigmatic presence in a landscape far from known Norse settlements. How did a group of explorers traverse the vast wilderness of the American Midwest, surviving rivers, forests, and winter's relentless chill? Could these runes represent an actual journey, a record lost to history and preserved only in this weathered stone? Or is the story embedded in the runes a reflection of human imagination, a bridge between folklore, aspiration, and historical possibility? Each question underscores the tension between tangible evidence and the narratives we construct around it. The stone itself is worn and pitted, yet the carvings remain legible, suggesting careful craftsmanship. Certain sequences of runes appear deliberate, methodical, as if the carver sought permanence and clarity. Around the edges, chisel marks hint at both skill and intention, raising further questions about the circumstances of its creation. Was it inscribed in haste during a transient moment in the wilderness? Or was it the product of deliberate planning, a formal record meant to endure across time and space? These possibilities invite speculation not only about the artifact, but about the people who might have produced it. Contextual clues complicate the narrative. The surrounding landscape, forests, waterways, and plains, aligns with the routes suggested in the stone's inscriptions. Yet no corroborating evidence of a Norse presence has been conclusively found nearby. Some scholars propose that the stone may have been transported intentionally, brought from another location and left as a symbolic marker rather than a literal record. Others suggest that linguistic anomalies in the runes could point to either a hybridization of language over time or a deliberate attempt to create ambiguity, a puzzle for future generations to decipher. In either case, the artifact functions as both message and enigma, bridging history and myth. The stone's discovery ignited a wave of interest in the early 20th century, coinciding with broader fascination with Viking exploration and Norse presence in the Americas. Enthusiasts explored the possibility that Scandinavian adventurers reached far beyond Greenland and Newfoundland, pushing the boundaries of known pre-Columbian voyages. Yet critical scrutiny, including analyses of linguistic patterns and weathering, challenged these claims, suggesting later creation or local fabrication. Even today, the debate persists in scholarly journals, local museums, and popular culture, revealing the enduring power of mystery and human curiosity. What makes the Kensington Runestone compelling is not simply its historical implications, but the questions it raises about interpretation, belief, and the passage of time. If genuine, it forces a reconsideration of the scope and scale of early exploration in North America, suggesting routes, encounters, and stories that were previously unimagined. If a hoax, it still speaks to cultural memory, imagination, and the ways communities seek connection to a larger narrative of human endeavor. In both scenarios, the stone challenges our assumptions about who traveled, what they recorded, and how history preserves, or obscures, the traces of human ambition. Standing before the stone, one is struck by the subtle interplay between certainty and doubt. The runes are a language frozen in time, inviting careful study while resisting easy interpretation. They speak to endurance, to the desire to be remembered, and to the persistence of human curiosity. What did the inscriber hope to convey? Who was meant to read this message? And what stories were lost before the stone came to light? Could there be other artifacts yet undiscovered, hidden beneath the soil, forests, or waters of the American Midwest, awaiting the patient eye of an observer? The Kensington Runestone, whether artifact or artifice, occupies a liminal space between history and legend, inviting us to consider not only the past it purports to document, but also the broader questions it raises about exploration, human imagination, and the narratives that endure across centuries. In its quiet, weathered presence, the stone reminds us that history is never fixed, that the boundaries of knowledge are porous, and that mysteries, patiently preserved in earth and rock, continue to whisper their stories for those who choose to listen. Even today, as scholars debate and enthusiasts speculate, the Kensington Runestone endures as a silent witness to questions that remain unanswered. Was it the record of true explorers lost in time, or a deliberate creation meant to spark curiosity? And beyond this single artifact, how many other stories of human adventure and contact lie hidden, waiting for discovery, interpretation, and reflection? From the dense forests and river valleys of ancient Japan, where early agricultural settlements quietly thrived, emerges one of the most enigmatic artifacts of prehistoric human expression: the Dogu figurines. These small clay creations, often no taller than a hand, possess a presence that belies their size, their forms simultaneously delicate and unnerving, embodying a world that is largely lost to time, yet vividly suggested in their shapes. The Dogu, which date from the Jomon period, approximately 14,000 to 300 BCE, have been unearthed across the Japanese archipelago, often in peat-rich soils that have preserved their fine detail over millennia. Each figurine is a window into a past where human imagination, spirituality, and ritual intersected in ways that remain deeply mysterious. Some Dogu depict humanoid forms, stylized and abstract, with oversized eyes, exaggerated limbs, and intricate body markings. Others seem more symbolic, with spirals, perforations, or geometric motifs etched into their surfaces. The range of forms, sizes, and decorations points to a society deeply engaged with both the physical and metaphysical worlds, creating objects that were not merely ornamental, but likely imbued with purpose and meaning. Archaeologists have long debated the role of Dogu in Jomon society. Were they talismans, used in rituals of fertility, healing, or protection? Did they serve as intermediaries between humans and unseen forces, vessels of spiritual power, or markers of social or familial identity? Some figurines show signs of wear or deliberate breakage, hinting at ceremonies in which they were used and perhaps ritually retired, echoing practices in which objects are charged with power and then returned to the earth. Yet, despite decades of study, no definitive explanation has emerged, leaving the Dogu suspended between the known and the unknowable. What strikes observers immediately is the level of craftsmanship and intentionality in these objects. The Jomon people, while lacking metallurgy, worked clay with remarkable skill. The curves, incisions, and patterns of Dogu reveal not only aesthetic sensibilities, but an understanding of form, proportion, and symbolism. Some figurines feature limbs positioned in what appears to be gestural communication, while others have eyes so large and detailed that they seem to watch, to perceive, or to record unseen events. Could these features reflect spiritual or shamanic visions, a deliberate attempt to capture aspects of consciousness or perception beyond the material world? And if so, what insights into Jomon beliefs and cosmology might these small figures hold? The geographical distribution of Dogu adds another layer to the mystery. Found across northern and central Japan, in settlements ranging from modest villages to larger ritual centers, they suggest a widespread cultural phenomenon. Yet each figurine is unique, hinting at localized practices, individual artisans, or distinct ritual traditions. How did these communities maintain a shared symbolic language while allowing for such variation? Were there regional schools of Dogu making, or were these objects deeply personal, created for specific individuals or families? The interplay between standardization and individualization mirrors questions about social cohesion and cultural transmission in prehistoric societies. Some of the most striking Dogu are those with goggle eyes, a feature that has fueled speculation about their function. These bulging eyes, sometimes accentuated with deeply incised lines, evoke both human and otherworldly forms, blurring the boundary between the seen and unseen. Could they represent spiritual sight, a visionary state, or perhaps the presence of supernatural entities? Comparisons have even been drawn to later shamanic imagery or ritual masks, suggesting continuity in symbolic thought across millennia. The intentional exaggeration of certain features hints at meaning beyond mere representation, a deliberate codification of belief and perception into tangible form. Beyond spiritual interpretations, Dogu also provoke questions about technological and artistic capability. Clay, fired at relatively low temperatures, was nonetheless shaped into forms capable of surviving thousands of years. The consistent proportions, recurring motifs, and careful surface treatment suggest shared conventions and training, perhaps indicating a community invested in transmitting knowledge, ritual practice, and aesthetic norms across generations. Were Dogu a form of prehistoric pedagogy, a visual language encoding information about health, fertility, or cosmology? And if so, what dimensions of human knowledge are now lost with the absence of contextual texts or oral tradition? The context of Dogu discovery often adds to their mystique. Unearthed in burial sites, pit deposits, or near hearths, they speak to the integration of these objects into the rhythms of daily and ceremonial life. Some figurines are deliberately broken or deformed before deposition, a practice that resonates with cross-cultural traditions of killing objects to release their power or complete their ritual cycle. The interplay between creation, use, and destruction reinforces the sense that Dogu were more than mere objects. They were active participants in a world of ritual, belief, and social structure. Speculation has extended even further. Some observers, struck by the exaggerated proportions and abstract forms, have suggested that Dogu may represent encounters with altered states of consciousness, visionary experiences, or even otherworldly beings. While such ideas remain in the realm of conjecture, they underscore the enduring impact of these figurines. They challenge our assumptions about prehistoric cognition, creativity, and perception. The Dogu invite us to consider a world in which material objects, symbolic thinking, and spiritual experience were inseparable, a world where clay could be transformed into a bridge between the human and the unknown. As we consider these enigmatic figures today, the questions multiply. What did the Jomon people hope to communicate, record, or influence through the creation of Dogu? How did these small objects interact with broader social, spiritual, and environmental contexts? And how many aspects of their lives, beliefs, and technologies remain invisible to us, preserved only in gestures frozen in clay? Each Dogu is a story fragment, a message partially obscured, urging careful observation and reflection. The Dogu figurines of Japan endure as silent witnesses to human imagination, ritual, and mystery. Their presence reminds us that the history of human thought is not linear, not always recorded in stone or script, but encoded in objects, gestures, and art forms that survive the passage of millennia. They ask us to look closely, to question deeply, and to embrace uncertainty as part of the exploration of our shared human past. And perhaps most compellingly, they leave us with the quiet, persistent invitation. What else remains hidden in the folds of time, waiting for discovery, interpretation, and wonder? From the windswept plains and limestone outcrops of Malta, where the Mediterranean sun casts a golden glow across undulating fields, rise some of the oldest freestanding stone structures in the world, the megalithic temples. These monuments, scattered across the islands of Malta and Gozo, are both awe-inspiring and enigmatic. Towering limestone blocks, some weighing tens of tons, are arranged in precise, curving layouts that speak to a vision of space, ritual, and celestial alignment far beyond what might be expected of Neolithic communities. Walking among these ancient stones, one cannot help but feel the weight of human ambition and the persistence of memory carved into rock. The temples, such as Hagar Chim, Menasdra, and Tarxian, date from approximately 3600 to 2500 BCE, making them older than the pyramids of Egypt and contemporary with the first urban settlements of the Fertile Crescent. Archaeologists have meticulously studied their construction, revealing complex architecture, apses, altars, niches, and carefully laid paving stones. Many temples are oriented toward solstices or other astronomical events, suggesting a sophisticated understanding of the heavens. How did a small island population, with only stone tools at their disposal, conceive of, plan, and construct such enduring monuments? And for what purpose were these massive edifices raised, their stones carefully shaped and positioned over centuries of labor? The interior spaces of the temples often feature intricate carvings and symbolic motifs. Spiral patterns, animal representations, and abstract shapes are etched into the stone, hinting at ritual practices, spiritual beliefs, or a visual language now lost to time. Some scholars interpret the motifs as fertility symbols, reflecting the central role of life cycles, reproduction, and nature in the Neolithic worldview. Others speculate that the carvings may have encoded knowledge of celestial movements, cosmology, or social hierarchy. Yet, despite extensive research, the meaning behind these symbols remains largely mysterious, leaving the temples as open books with pages we can glimpse but not fully read. Excavations have also uncovered altars, figurines, and offerings, suggesting ceremonial activity. Many of the figurines depict stylized human forms, often with pronounced features emphasizing fertility and vitality. Could these have served as objects of veneration, embodiments of deities, or tools in ritual performance? The alignment of the temples with celestial events, such as the rising sun on solstices, adds another layer of intrigue. Were these monuments calendars, astronomical observatories, or spiritual centers bridging the terrestrial and cosmic realms? And if so, what ceremonies, gatherings, or knowledge might have unfolded under the open sky, within the shadow of these enduring stones? The sheer scale and precision of construction hint at an organized and collaborative society capable of mobilizing labor, planning logistics, and transmitting knowledge over generations. Stones were quarried, shaped, and transported, sometimes over hundreds of meters, with remarkable accuracy and placement. How did these communities coordinate such feats without written records or advanced technology? Were there master builders or religious authorities directing construction, or did knowledge emerge collectively across a community steeped in tradition and shared vision? The answers are obscured by time, leaving only the silent testimony of the stones themselves. Speculation extends beyond the practical and ritual functions. Some observers have suggested that the Maltese temples reflect an early understanding of sacred geometry, acoustics, or energy, with spaces designed to amplify sound or create specific sensory experiences. Others propose that the megaliths were more than religious centers. They may have functioned as social anchors, markers of territorial claim, or symbolic expressions of identity for communities navigating the uncertainties of prehistoric island life. Each hypothesis invites further questions. What knowledge, cultural practices, or beliefs were encoded in these stones? And why did this sophisticated culture decline, leaving the temples as solitary witnesses to a vanished society? The placement of the temples across Malta and Gozo also provides insight into their significance. Many are positioned on elevated ground, overlooking fertile valleys or the sea. perhaps serving as territorial markers, ceremonial centers, or points of communication between settlements. Could the distribution of these sites reveal a network of interconnected communities, each contributing to a shared cultural and spiritual landscape? If so, what stories, rituals, or social structures linked these islanders across generations, leaving an imprint in the form of stone that survives to this day? Even the decay and erosion of the temples tell a story. Some stones are weathered by wind and salt, others broken or displaced over millennia, hinting at both natural forces and human activity altering the monuments. The resilience of these structures, despite centuries of exposure and occasional vandalism, suggests that their builders understood the properties of limestone and structural balance remarkably well. How did they acquire such knowledge, and what techniques or cultural practices enabled them to construct monuments that continue to inspire awe thousands of years later? The megalithic temples of Malta challenge our understanding of Neolithic Europe. They reveal a society capable of abstract thought, spatial planning, symbolic communication, and ritual sophistication at a time when most communities were still primarily focused on subsistence agriculture. Yet their creators remain anonymous, their voices silent except for the stones they raised and the carvings they left behind. What inspired these ancient people to undertake such monumental labor? And what was the full significance of their work within the life of their communities? As we walk among the massive stones today, the mysteries of Malta resonate with a quiet power. The alignment of walls and altars, the enigmatic carvings, and the enduring presence of these temples evoke questions that have no definitive answers. What knowledge, belief systems, or practices have been lost, buried beneath centuries of history, soil, and human forgetting? And perhaps more intriguingly, what does the very existence of these monuments tell us about the capabilities, imagination, and spiritual depth of a civilization that arose on a small, sun-drenched archipelago in the heart of the Mediterranean? The megalithic temples of Malta remain both a testament and an enigma. They remind us that human ingenuity and ritual consciousness stretch far back into prehistory, that monumental achievements do not always accompany written history, and that even the smallest islands can hold mysteries capable of challenging our understanding of the ancient world. What other secrets might lie hidden beneath the Mediterranean soil, waiting to reveal themselves to those who approach these stones with curiosity, reverence, and imagination? From the rugged highlands of northern Ethiopia, where the sun rises over escarpments that have witnessed millennia of human history, emerges one of Africa's most enigmatic ancient civilizations, Aksum. Here, in the shadows of towering obelisks and amidst the remnants of once thriving settlements, lies a story of power, faith, and cultural ingenuity that has puzzled scholars and inspired wonder for centuries. The Aksumite kingdom, which flourished roughly from the 1st to the 7th centuries CE, is often remembered for its monumental stelae, its sophisticated urban centers, and its role as a hub of trade linking Africa, the Mediterranean, and beyond. Yet the deeper origins of this civilization and the precise pathways by which it rose to prominence remain shrouded in mystery, whispered in stone and gold long after the voices of its people fell silent. The city of Aksum, nestled in a fertile plateau surrounded by hills and rivers, was both a political and spiritual heart of the kingdom. Archaeological evidence reveals complex urban planning, including palatial compounds, public spaces, and sophisticated water management systems. Massive stone obelisks, some reaching more than 20 meters in height, stand as silent sentinels, their surfaces intricately carved with symbolic motifs that hint at religious, political, and social significance. What drove the Aksumites to raise these monuments, balancing the demands of engineering, artistry, and ritual? Were they markers of lineage, religious devotion, or territorial assertion? And how did a civilization situated in the highlands of Africa achieve such technical and artistic mastery during a period when much of the surrounding world was still emerging from antiquity? Trade networks were central to the growth and influence of Aksum. The kingdom occupied a strategic position near the Red Sea, linking it to distant lands across the Arabian Peninsula, the Mediterranean, and the Indian Ocean. Excavations and historical texts reveal evidence of commerce in ivory, gold, frankincense, and exotic animals, suggesting both economic sophistication and cultural exchange. Did these trade routes bring ideas and technologies that shaped the Aksumite way of life? Could the blending of local traditions with foreign influences have sparked innovations in metallurgy, architecture, and governance that distinguished the kingdom from its neighbors? And if so, what other contributions of Aksum have been lost to time, obscured by centuries of change and upheaval? Perhaps the most striking markers of Aksumite identity are the stelae and tombs that dominate the landscape. The giant obelisks, some intricately decorated with what appear to be architectural motifs in miniature, may have served as markers of elite tombs, symbols of cosmic alignment, or emblems of dynastic authority. Beneath these monoliths, burial chambers have revealed treasures of gold, ceramics, and carved ivories. What beliefs about death, the afterlife, and the divine underpinned such elaborate monuments? And what do these material remains reveal about the society's hierarchy, values, and worldview? Even as the stones endure, the precise intentions of the builders elude us, leaving open the question of what ancient wisdom and ritual knowledge has vanished with the passage of time. Writing and inscriptions provide another tantalizing thread of mystery. While Aksumites developed a script known as Ge'ez, used primarily for monumental inscriptions and religious texts, much of the kingdom's early history predates surviving written records. How did the transmission of knowledge, law, and ritual function in the earliest centuries of Aksum? Were oral traditions paramount, encoding history and ideology in stories, chants, and ceremonial practices? And if so, how much has been irretrievably lost, leaving archaeologists to piece together civilization from its stone and gold, its pottery shards, and the faint echoes of its trade routes? Religious life played a pivotal role in shaping Aksumite society. Archaeological evidence and historical accounts suggest a transition from indigenous polytheistic practices to early Christianity in the 4th century CE, a transformation that positioned the kingdom as a unique spiritual center in Africa. What catalyzed this shift? How did the interplay of local belief systems, imported religious ideas, and political ambition mold the culture, architecture, and social structure of the kingdom? And what traces of pre-Christian spirituality, now obscured or repurposed, still linger in the symbolism etched into obelisks, tombs, and ritual objects? The origins of Aksumite civilization also invite speculation about the peoples and cultures that preceded it. Material evidence points to connections with earlier agricultural communities, tribal networks, and trade outposts, suggesting that Aksum did not emerge in isolation, but as part of a broader tapestry of human settlement in the Horn of Africa. How did these early influences coalesce into a state capable of monumental architecture, sophisticated trade, and far-reaching diplomacy? And what other settlements, now lost beneath layers of soil and centuries of change, contributed to the intellectual and cultural inheritance of Aksum? Even the obelisks themselves offer unanswered questions. Carved with an artistry and precision that would challenge modern engineers, they are both architectural marvels and cultural texts. How were these massive stones quarried, transported, and erected without metal tools or advanced machinery? What knowledge of geometry, physics, and collaborative labor enabled their creation? Could there be astronomical alignments or symbolic correspondences embedded in their placement that we have yet to understand fully? And if so, what insights into Aksumite cosmology, ritual practice, or political ideology might they reveal once interpreted? As one walks through the archaeological sites of Aksum today, the grandeur of the past is palpable. Stone monuments rise from the plateau, tombs whisper stories of the elite and ordinary alike, and the landscape itself seems infused with the memory of human endeavor, ambition, and belief. And yet, for all that we have uncovered, much remains shrouded in mystery. What other traces of this civilization, artifacts, inscriptions, or settlements, await discovery beneath the soil, hidden by time, erosion, or human neglect? How complete is our picture of a culture whose influence spanned continents, yet whose earliest chapters remain partially written in the silence of stone and soil? The origins of Aksum remind us that history is rarely linear, and that civilizations can flourish in unexpected places, shaped by environment, trade, belief, and human ingenuity. They compel us to question the completeness of our understanding, to recognize the vast gaps that remain in reconstructing human development, and to wonder at the resilience, creativity, and spiritual depth of a people who built a kingdom that still casts shadows across the Ethiopian highlands. What secrets linger beneath the surface, waiting for those willing to read the landscape, interpret the stones, and listen closely enough to hear the faint echoes of an ancient civilization whose story continues to unfold?